Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the City Council of Thousand Oaks for September 22nd, 2009. Will you please stand and join me in pledging allegiance to our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Fox?
Here.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Present.
Councilmember Irwin?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gillette is absent. Mayor Clancy?
Here. Request for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item. Item 8A, the Walsh property at 5433 North Lakeview Canyon Road. Has a request from the applicant to letter and supplemental packet to continue the public hearing to date certain, which will be October 27th, 2009. Is there a motion to accept that? Ms. Irwin?
I'll motion that we accept the continuance.
Okay, comments? Please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 7C, authorization for U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and California Department of Toxic Substances Control to conduct soil sampling in Lang Ranch open space is being pulled from the agenda at this time. Okay, before we do special presentations, Mr. Mitnick is going to give us a brief fire update. You certainly can see the smoke. It looks very threatening out there, and it's only appropriate that we have an update on what's going on with it. Mr. Mitnick?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Assistant City Manager Kenny Hong will put the item up on the overhead. So we have an overview. While they're doing that, let me just first off assure the audience and members of the viewing public that the fire is quite some distance from the city of Thousand Oaks, and the city officials, we've been in constant contact with the fire department and the sheriff's department, and we're monitoring the situation. I'll give you some facts of the fire at the moment. A half hour ago or so, the mayor, myself, and our public information officer did have a conversation with our division chief for Thousand Oaks, and we've also been in contact with others in the department. The fire, the Fillmore or Moore Park fire, it is quite extensive at this point. As of 5 p.m., over 6,000 acres have been burned, and this is south of Fillmore, north of Moore Park. And no damage at this point. No homes or structures damaged. No injuries to any residents at this point. 2 firefighters had some minor injuries. 200 homes in the more rural areas have been evacuated, mostly ranch communities. Now, in the city of Thousand Oaks, even though we are quite some distance, our senior center on Jans Road is serving as an evacuation center should it need to be used. In an abundance of caution, the Park District and the city have closed all the open space and trails in the Conejo Valley until further notice. Our Public Works Department has filled all the city water tanks and topped off all the city's vehicles, should they be, with gasoline, should they be called into service. In the police department, our police department is ready and prepared to provide assistance if need be, if they're called out of the community to assist with evacuations and crowd control and that type of thing. The school district too has also taken a number of preliminary and precautionary steps. A preliminary smoke advisory has been issued throughout the Conejo Valley, and in response the district has limited physical activity during recess and PE and that type of thing. And our city website, www.toaks.org, there's information on there, including a link to a tracking map. So if any of you want to see where the fires are, you can do that. And I don't know if the overhead is working now, Candy? If we can put that up. I'm sorry, but it doesn't display well. The council members, you each have a hard copy of this, so you can see where the fire is heading. It's moving in a somewhat southwest direction, started just north of Grimes Canyon, moving toward Moore Park. It's still a ways from any track homes, but as you can see, it could ultimately come down this way. And the fire department has assured us that it does not look like that'll happen at this point. So with that's your update on that. And if we learn anything more during the council meeting, we'll share that with the council. And I do want to point out that Battalion Chief Steve Winter, he's sitting off there to the right, he is here to represent the fire department in the normal course of the council meeting. And Steve will leave after public comments, but we do appreciate your efforts. And all the stations in Thousand Oaks are fully staffed, and mutual aid is working well. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. Now is the time for our special presentations portion of our council meeting. So give me a minute to get down to the dais and we'll continue this. Okay, for our first presentation, I'd like to introduce Kevin Leahy of the Newbury Park Pony League 2009 Shetland World Series champions. The Shetlands range from 4 to 6 years old, and this is the first time in Newbury Park pony baseball history where a division has made it to the World Series tournament. They may be the youngest category in Pony League, but they are very, very determined. And if I was telling the coach that at the opening day of the season, I looked at some of the T-ball players and I was absolutely amazed that they can make legs of uniforms so short. Well, see, we're getting a little bit longer now, and we look forward to them getting even longer. Coach? How about telling us a little bit about the team and introduce the players?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'd first like to thank the City Council and Mayor Clancy for honoring these wonderful players and their families. The boys had a fantastic, fun-filled season where they exceeded all expectations. The World Series experience was a life event that they will never forget. In the Pony National Tournaments, including the World Series, the team went undefeated with a record of 11-0. The strong competition, the wonderful camaraderie, and the event at the Reagan Library were all experiences that most of the players dream about. And to think, these boys are only 5 and 6 years old. They set the standards pretty high for themselves. The point I am most proud of these players about is how they played as a complete team. They helped each other and always picked each other up. Each and every one of them greatly contributed to the team. If they had a poor hitting game, they made a great play in the field or made a strong throw to keep the runner off second base. They played their hearts out and never gave up. In fact, they came from behind in the last 4 games to beat 4 very good teams, including the World Series championship game when they were down 5-0 and came back to win it. They are a great group of players and true champions that make the city proud. First, I'd like to announce great good friends and great coaches that we couldn't have done this without. So first, Brian Bachicha. Steve Jackson. Mark Martinez. And now the wonderful players. Guys, come on up. One at a time. Come on up, Nolan Alvarez.
Congratulations to you, Nolan. Here, I'm taking it for you. Here, come over that away.
Ryan Bachicha.
Congratulations, Nolan.
Let me shake my hand.
Ryan, get back here.
Ryan Gerbervaz.
Congratulations, Ryan.
Dominic Guerrero.
Well done.
Joshua Jackson.
Hot shot. There you go, Joshua.
Ryan Jordan.
Congratulations, Ryan. There you are. Going over there.
Nick Leahy.
Nice job. Here you are. Whoa. Get back here.
Brandon Martinez.
That's hustle. Congratulations.
Matthew Martinez.
Congratulations, Matthew. Good cover. There you are.
Oh, buddy. Charles Messino.
Here you are, Charles. That's yours.
Derek Rivera.
Congratulations.
Buddy.
Come on back. Come on, those teeth.
Blake Ross.
Congratulations, Blake.
And Matthew Smith.
Shake the church's hand.
The Shetland World Champions.
I'd like to invite council to come on down for a photo.
I'm not going to point it out. Oh, sure. Thank you.
Coaches, I want to congratulate you for all that you've done with the kids, and you've done a great job. It's just wonderful. And again, one more time, let's hear for the Newbury Park Pony League group. Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce Ed Kitchen, coach of the Thousand Oaks Little League, 2009 Big League Division United States champions. Congratulations. You know, congratulations to you and the team. We've celebrated previous championships with you. Just a couple of years ago, it was world champion. This year, I think it's extremely important to remember that there's only one U.S. champion in the U.S., and you guys is it. So you did a really good job, and we're very, very proud of your accomplishment. I cannot say enough about the benefits of team sports. They teach sportsmanship, team spirit, hard work, and physical fitness. What I'll have to tell everyone here, though, about the team is that when they go out of town to play, they spend free time going to hospitals and orphanages, things like that, to give comfort and say hello and make people's lives a little bit brighter. That says more to me about the quality of the individual than their athletic accomplishment necessarily. I think that's absolutely huge. And how about telling us about the team's winning season and introduce the players? You're on.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the City Council and a few people that have helped this team along the way. John Short, Roger Lazar, Ron and Connie Peters, and Kathleen and Frank Brady. They did a lot of things behind the scenes. Before I introduce the players, I'd like to describe the type of team they were and still are. I've been very fortunate to have coached 8 teams that have reached the World Series, including 3 that won the World Series. And of all those 8 teams, this was probably the least talented team I've ever taken there. But let me preface that by saying right now, they're awfully young for their age division, and the potential talent there is tremendous. That being said, they were also the best team I've ever coached. I've never seen a team get along so well and understand their roles so perfectly. John Wooden used to describe teams as cars. He used to say that a team was like a car, and the engine, although being a very important part of that car, wasn't the only piece of the car. If the lug nuts on the car came loose and flew off and the wheels flew off, what good was that engine? Everybody on the team understood their role, and even if it was small or big. And this team deserved to be the United States champions. Congratulations. Okay, I'd like to have them come down. Outfielder Austin Alviso. Pitcher Michael Coates.
Congratulations, team. Well done.
Second baseman Hayden Cronenbold.
Coach, you're on. Justin, congratulations. Great year.
Left-handed pitcher Dakota Fogg.
Congratulations, team. Yeah, well done.
Outfielder Tim Ginther.
Congratulations.
Pitcher Tyler Karp.
Congratulations.
Second baseman, shortstop, Trevor O'Shea. Pitcher, first baseman, Nick Schmidt. This is Nick Schmidt coming down. First baseman, Matt Tuzinski. And catcher, John Travnik. Thank you. Here is the 2009 Big League United States champions.
What an excellent job, what a great result, and great season, and we certainly look forward to great things from next year. Again, I'd like to invite council down for a photograph. Okay, our next presentation, special presentation, is recognizing the healing work being done by a unique group that is part of our city's Arts Commission. I'd like to introduce Annabelle Darchichin, or close to that. Coordinator of the Healing Power of Music. This is a group of compassionate artists who share their talent and time playing music for residents who are unable to leave their homes or nursing facilities. Their contribution brings great peace and joy to many. Annabelle, please tell us about the program. And congratulations. Please.
Before I start, I would like to, on behalf of the Thousand Oaks Arts Commission, congratulate all you wonderful baseball players who will be our future Dodger teams. Thousand Oaks is such a great community, everyone working together and all their aspirations, and I'd like to tell all of you guys, just follow your dream and it will happen. Mine happened here. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, I'm very pleased to be here this evening on behalf of the Thousand Oaks Arts Commission and their program, Healing Power of Music, honoring Dr. Stephen Custard. But first, I would like to tell you about the program. The seed to this started for me as a child when, because of illness, my mother was hospitalized many years. And as a child, I wanted to do something, to lift the spirits of people who were unable to get out and experience some joyous things. I want to thank the Arts Commission and the City Council for making that a reality. And also, I want to thank my Lord Jesus for giving me the health to continue. Healing Power of Music involves volunteers who are singers, dancers, and musicians who go to the cerebral palsy residents and also the Senior Concerns Fitzgerald Center. I am so proud of all the volunteers, and especially when they say to me, "When can I come back?" The program has received a special commendation from Congressman Brad Sherman and also the Cerebral Palsy Home. Our very first volunteer was Dr. Stephen Custer, cellist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra since 1974, and has retired from the orchestra this month. He is a graduate of the Juilliard School of Music, and Stephen never has refused me any time that I call him. He's just been a very dedicated volunteer, and I think City Council will be very happy to know it hasn't cost you any money, this program. Most memorable to me was when Steve was the first performer at the Cerebral Palsy Home. One of the selections he played was the music of Bach. There was this young man whose head was resting on his shoulder as though it was difficult for him to lift. As Stephen played Bach, the young man lifted his head way up to the heavens. Music is well said to be the speech of angels. And Steve, you have truly been an angel to our program. It is with great pleasure I introduce to you Dr. Stephen Custer. Thank you.
Steve, I want to thank you for coming down tonight. Your son apprised us of the fact that you were retiring after 36 years of service. That's absolutely admirable. And what we'd like to do is present you with a commendation and wish you quite well with your retirement, and ask you perhaps for a small piece. So again, congratulations on 36 years of doing excellent work.
I'd like to thank all the people, not only in the council or the people of Thousand Oaks, but even the school kids. I've tried to play for every age. I really enjoy playing for young people and people at the other end of life. I came out it's 25 years since I came to Thousand Oaks, and I thought, well, I just have to go back to LA and play music, but it turned out in my neighborhood I had a number of prominent musicians, and we formed Westlake Chamber Ensemble and all these other groups, and we're still going, and I really look forward to doing even more playing out here now that I don't have to go to LA. And thank you all. Oh, I'm going to play a couple of selections. One is a piece that I wrote many, many years ago. I was still a student, and it's called Suite for solo cello. And then I'm going to play The Swan, which I think is probably the most famous cello piece after that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Custer, thank you very, very much for that. It was indeed beautiful, and we'll miss you in the community. And Patricia Jones, President and Executive Director of Alliance for the Arts, to join me. Our city recognizes and appreciates the benefits that result from productive working relationships between community partners. Southern California Edison and Alliance for the Arts are two of these longtime partners, and they have supported many valuable programs. Rudy Gonzalez is here tonight to yet again demonstrate Southern Cal Edison's generosity. They're working with the Alliance for the Arts, the fundraising arm of the Civic Arts Plaza, to support a wonderful children's program. Rudy, tell us about the latest endeavor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Mitnick, city staff. My name is Rudy Gonzalez. I'm Southern California Edison's public affairs manager here in Thousand Oaks, and it gives me great pleasure to be here this evening. I'm very excited. This is the best part of my job, and unfortunately, I don't get to do it quite as often as I'd like to. The Alliance for the Arts applied for a grant through Edison's Charitable Contributions Organization late last year, and we don't work at the speed of light. It took quite some time for us to get the grant application through the review process, and I was tickled to death when I heard just a few weeks ago that the Alliance had been awarded a grant from Southern California Edison. The grant amount was for $50,000. That, along with a small sponsorship that we are offering to the Alliance for an event that's taking place this Saturday, which I'm sure that Patricia will be happy to tell you about. Combined, the total number of dollars that we're offering to the Alliance this evening is $52,500. So it gives me great pleasure to be able to present that to the Alliance this evening.
Good.
Sure.
Come on out.
It's their money. You know, I am a politician.
Just say thank you. We haven't seen a check like that in a long time, you know, with the economy, so it's really exciting. And I want to thank Edison very much. The last time we received our first gift from Edison in 1994 when the center first opened, and they donated $50,000 at that time to invest in the endowment to support operations and maintenance of the theaters. This is their second contribution of $50,000, and cumulatively, they're just over the $100,000 mark, and we're going to be promoting Edison on the Wall of Honor in the Cavalier of the Theater from the patron of the arts to sponsor of the arts. And I have a gift that you can take back to your colleagues at Edison and thank them very much on behalf of the Alliance. And this gift will enable us to bus in 25 children who live at or below the poverty level to see a production in the Cavalier or Share Farm Theater, and we're very excited to be able to do that with this grant. Thank you again, Rudy. Oh, pardon me, one other item. Just, I think there's another group that's going to plug the fun run on Saturday morning, but we are doing the 5th annual fun run this Saturday. We have about 150 runners signed up so far, and we expect another 150 to show up that morning. So we're going to be busy. And again, that'll help us continue to raise funds for the same program. So we're very excited about that. So tell all your friends. They can go to www.allianceforthearts.org to register if they haven't already. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you again, Rudy. Patricia, always good to see you. And I have to say that the program that promotes the young children, the underprivileged children, from coming down and seeing performances is so valuable, really, to the country and to the kids particularly. So thank you very much for what you've done. We'll wait just a minute or two to get the traffic out. Okay, would the city clerk please announce public comments?
This is the time and place for public comments. The speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All speakers for public hearings shall be called and heard during the public hearing. Pursuant to council standards of operation, the mayor may assist any speaker from straying into areas not within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Under state law, issues discussed under public comments can have no action unless listed on the agenda and may be referred to the city manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. All documents for city council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. 6 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker is Harry Selvin, followed by Kathleen Furness, followed by Janet Cavell and Craig Morton. If subsequent speakers would align themselves down here in the reserve seats, it'll make things run a little more smoothly. Good evening, Harry. Please state your name and city of residence.
Harry Selvin, Westlake, Mayor, City Council people. I am the chair of the Ad Hoc Strategic Marketing Committee, and we're here to give you an update. The goal of the Ad Hoc Strategic Marketing Committee, the Board of Governors, is basically to fill seats of the 2 theaters and create excitement and awareness of the new season. You've already seen 2 marketing initiatives around the city. The ads on the back of the TO buses, I think you've all seen those, and the newly installed banners along Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Now we have a 3rd initiative, and that is to create a video which is produced by Cinnovative, an award-winning creative studio specializing in commercial and media production. Cinnovative worked directly with our theater staff for approximately 1 month to complete this video. This is currently airing on TOTV and the civicartsplaza.com homepage. We'd like to show that to you at this time, if we may. Would you roll the film? Hopefully, this will entertain those that are tuning in and watching and seeing this, and hopefully stimulate the theater and the productions that are coming this season. We'll know how effective it is at the end of the season, but we're doing a lot of strategic marketing and planning and projects in order to keep everything active. Are there any questions, or if not?
Harry, I have one comment.
Yes.
The program is obviously a success because the speaker series sold out. But thank you very much for coming down tonight and bringing the film clip. It was really very well done and very informative. Thank you. Next speaker, Kathleen Furness, followed by Janet Cavell, followed by John Rich. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. I appreciate you allowing me to share some information with you about mental illness. I'm representing the National Alliance on Mental Illness, known as NAMI. The week of October 4th is Mental Illness Awareness Week. It's a time to remember those who are suffering with severe mental illness and their supporting family members. NAMI in Thousand Oaks has a 12-week educational program called Family to Family, and it's a program that helps families to understand mental illness. There's no cost for this program. It's a service to the community put on by NAMI. And we also in Thousand Oaks have a support group for friends and families that's met for over 25 years. Thank you for allowing me to share this information with you.
Thank you very much for bringing the message to us. Janet Cavell, followed by John Rich, followed by Suzanne Duckett.
Good evening, mayors, council members, watching public. I'm co-chair this year of the Thousand Oaks Arts Festival, which is this weekend at the Civic Arts Plaza right here out on the lawn at the Richard and Mary Carpenter Plaza Park and the lakes at Thousand Oaks. We're expanding this year. And it's free to the public, and we are delighted that this year, even with the economy the way it is, we have the same number of artists that we have had the past couple of years. So we are very proud of that fact. We've done a lot of recruiting for that. And right now I'm going to introduce my co-chair, Craig Morton from the Westlake Art Guild, to tell you a little more about the festival.
Thank you, Jana. This is going to be a fantastic weekend here right at the Civic Arts Plaza. It's going to be nonstop performances on 2 stages, almost 70 visual artists, and it's truly an extraordinary accomplishment of all elements of the community working together towards a greater good, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of that committee. It's going to be, as Jana said, September 26th and 27th right here at the Civic Arts Plaza and at the lakes. It'll include local visual and performing artists, and we'll have children's art experiences. It's just going to be a fantastic time. And to make that happen, a committee of 16 people have been working for 7 months since February, and we've had a lot of help to make this happen, including help from the City of Thousand Oaks. Jana, would you share with us our sponsors for this program? Thank you.
Okay. And while I do that, Craig's going to hand out our great program we have for this year that'll be on the grounds. And besides the visual artists, I don't think we mentioned we have performing artists all weekend too. So our sponsors this year, the City of Thousand Oaks, Conejo Recreation Park District, Arts Council, the Conejo Valley, the Westlake Art Guild, Cumulus Media, Ventura County Star, California Lutheran University, which will also be doing art demonstrations all weekend, Time Warner Cable, Art Limited, City of Westlake Village, Verizon, Wade's Wines, East Wind's Green Print, and the Lakes at Thousand Oaks. And don't forget, the whole festival kicks off with the Kids in the Arts Fun Run, which Patricia mentioned earlier, at 8 o'clock Saturday morning at the lakes. And for more info, go to toartsfestival.com. Thank you. We'll see you all there.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate your coming down. Next speaker is John Rich with Irene Brennick, followed by Suzanne Duckett, followed by Paul Dryman. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Irene Brennick. I'm the volunteer director over at Los Robles Hospital. And about 3 or 4 years ago, my boss gave me some tickets to this event called Las Vegas Cool. And so I brought some people and I went, and it was actually the most fun event I've ever gone to as far as a fundraiser. It's like a Vegas night, and there's entertainment and there's food and all these things. So after I went to the event, I started to research a little about the organization they were raising the funds for, and found out it was Conejo, the hospice of the Conejo. And since then, I've joined the board, and now I'm actually helping put on the event Las Vegas Cool. So a lot of you know about what hospice does, the wonderful work they do under the direction of Maria Prescott, the executive director. And they also work now with the hospital with the No One Dies Alone program. We have volunteers from hospice and the hospital that actually sit with a dying person until they pass. And they have support groups all over the place. And they ask no money from the people that they help. They help families of the dying as well as the person who is dying before, during, and after the death. And they ask for no money. So, of course, we need money to keep these services going. So this event is in Moore Park at the Moore Park Country Club, October 4th. It's on a Sunday from 5 to 9 p.m. If people want to come, it's $75 if you get your tickets ahead of time. Otherwise, it's $100 at the door. And they can call 495-2145. That's 495-2145. Or go to Los Robles. Oh, that's the wrong website. That's where I work. Sorry. hospiceoftheconejo.org. And there's going to be a bagpipe playing, and there's a Scotch toast while the sun is setting. It's beautiful out there. There's live entertainment I hear is very good. It's me, because I'm singing. And there's all kinds of food, and it's so fun, and gambling of any kind you can imagine. There's a big wheel now. If you buy tickets, you can spin the wheel and win all kinds of prizes. We have a lot of sponsors, and it's just a fantastic event, and I hope people come out and help us raise money, and maybe John has something else to add.
I think you covered it very well, but I'm Dr. Rich, and I've been president of the board for a couple of years and treasurer this year. It's a great deal. We're an organization that's only been here for 31 years, and we've had good community support, and we'd sure like to continue that. Our event, again, is October the 4th. It's at the Moore Park Country Club, and you'll have a great time if you come. Thank you very much.
And thank you both very much. Suzanne Duckett, followed by Paul Dryman. Good evening.
Good evening. Suzanne Duckett, Thousand Oaks. 4 things tonight. First, I want to thank the firefighters who put their lives on the line and who cut people out with the jaws of life from Metrolink, Amtrak, and auto accidents. I've been a recipient, so I completely know what they're up against. It's gruesome, but I want to thank them. So I'll cut you some slack tonight, Mr. Fox. A little tiny bit of slack. Number 2, I want to thank the baseball team, the youth who were here tonight, representing their team, their colors, their numbers, looking like a real team, and their coaches, being proud of the kids. It's an example for all of those teams that come up before you who don't really look like a team and may not be proud to be on a team, but I want to thank these kids tonight for looking and being a team and representing themselves as a team. So thank you, all of the little kids who left tonight. The third thing is, if you're annoyed with a local newspapers, and their lack of civility, I want you to think about taking the Daily News, which has in today's paper, a whole section on green and living green. So this is a forward-thinking paper, so if you're annoyed with what we have here in our area, please feel free to take the Daily News, because they're forward-thinking. And they don't name call and be annoying. The last thing, which is really the reason I came tonight, was to I wasn't going to do that. I want to thank the city of Simi Valley for the Metrolink Memorial Plaza. My neighbor was killed in a Metrolink accident. I want to thank Jackie Irwin for attending the memorial service and dedication. And I want to recognize Ernest Kish, Pete Kish. I looked his name up in the dictionary today, and he is absolutely what his name represents. He is a token of things to come. He was a real pledge. He was a bargain. When you went to him, you could shake his hand and absolutely depend on him. We were soulmates here in the city of Thousand Oaks and in the county. He was a staunch Republican. I'm a staunch Democrat. We were soulmates. We totally understood each other and respected each other. So I just want to thank Ernest P. Kish for what he brought to me.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate you being down here. Paul Dryman.
It's a tough act to follow. My name is Paul Dryman. I'm a resident of Newbury Park, and I'm the chairman of the Thousand Oaks Rotary Family of Rotary activities. And on behalf of my Rotary Club and the wellness community and the producer, Merv Kopp, I want to invite you and all the citizens watching on television to the second annual Stand Up for Cancer Survivors comedy fundraisers for the wellness community. These are their brochures. Our evening of outstanding laughter and fun will be provided by three very talented professional stand-up comics and well-balanced, can't read my writing, held right here in the Share Forum in 3 weeks on Thursday, October 8th at 7:15 p.m. Tickets are available at both the Wellness Community located at 530 Hampshire Road in Westlake Village, as well as the Civic Arts Plaza box office Ticketmaster. I'd like to invite Mayor Glancy to represent both the council and the city of Thousand Oaks and help us kick off the evening by being our welcoming speaker. Mr. Mayor, is that possible? I'll give you time to think about that. And we hope the rest of the council would consider coming as well. And check out the calendar on the Wellness Community's website, www.twcw.org, for additional events. Last year, these types of activities enabled the Wellness Community to provide free service to 3,160 individuals through 13,464 visits and more than 23,600 hours of service. And if you have any questions, call their office at 805-379-4777. And I thank you for your time.
Paul, thank you for coming down, and I'd be more than happy then to kick off the event, as long as you don't expect any jokes from me.
No problem.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're at the City and Redevelopment Agency consent calendar. Any items?
Move approval.
Move approval. Comments to the motion? Okay, please vote.
And that would exclude item C that was pulled.
My apologies, yes, that 7C has been pulled.
The motion carries 4-0. I'm just going to read the ordinance title for L. An ordinance amending section 4-8.02 through 4-8.05 of Chapter 8 of Title 4 and Section 5-11.01B of Chapter 11 of Title 5 of the Code regarding regulations for film permits.
Thank you. Now, if you would open 8B.
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8B, Annual Community Development Block Grant Performance Report for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, fiscal year 2008-09, Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding this hearing, and we have no speaker cards for this item.
Okay, thank you. And the report will be by Caroline Milton. Caroline?
Is this on? Yep. Thank you, Mayor Glancy and council members. Each year, as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the city provides a public hearing opportunity for comment on the city's expenditure of federal community development block grant funds and to review the city's annual grantee performance report, known as the CAPER. As shown in your staff report for the fiscal year ending June 30, the city expended $903,067 for activities that primarily benefit the city's lower income households. As a supplement to tonight's staff report, the council members received a copy of the proposed CAPER report, and staff is requesting approval for submission to HUD, and we are also available to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Questions of staff? Ms. Bill De La Pena?
I do have just one question. It's similar to one I've asked before. Why can't the contract with the organization which takes care of the day labor site be reduced? Because the cost of that is pretty high, in my opinion.
I imagine we could take a look at the cost there. However, the coordinators are on site 365 days, 6 hours a day. There are two coordinators. One stays at the site at 3120 Royal Oaks Drive, and the other one circulates in the area to discourage laborers from congregating in other locations near the main site.
Yes, I understand, but I'm wondering why, when during their negotiations, why no lower fee could be negotiated for this, because I think the hourly rate was above $20 an hour, if I recall correctly.
We could certainly take a look at the costs for the next contract.
Thank you.
Additional comments? None. Is there a motion? Mr. Fox?
Sure, I'll move the recommendation for fiscal year 2008-2009 on the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
Thank you. Comments to the motion? Ms. Bill De La Pena?
Just for the record, I will vote against it, and solely because of item number 6, which is the day labor site, and not for any of the other expenditures. It is primarily the day labor issue that I am against, and for those reasons, for that reason, I will vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a comment also. I think that what we put into the day labor site has been returned well to us. The lawlessness that used to occur down there, or the transgressions that occurred in people's lawns and houses, has been curtailed. It's been a fairly clean run operation. The cops do a good job. Those that teach the English as second language do a good job, and the supervisors seem to do a good job. So I'm pleased to support the motion. Mr. Fox, any following remarks? None. Please vote.
Motion carries 3-1. Councilmember Bill De La Pena dissenting. Councilmember Gillette absent.
Thank you very much. And would the clerk please open public hearing 8C?
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8C regarding water connection charges and water rate adjustments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding this public hearing. All documents for City Council and the official city record should be presented to the City Clerk prior to speaking, and speakers are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. We have 9 people who have presented speaker cards, and pursuant to council standards, the speakers will be allowed 4 minutes each.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Watkins, you're giving the report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Delancey, members of City Council. The item before you this evening is water connection service charge adjustments. This item was before the council with the water financial plan back in July of this year. At that point, City Council set the public hearing for tonight. That's in accordance with the requirements of Prop 218, which require that the findings be adopted and a notice be sent to all of those people who are affected, and then at least 45 days pass before the public hearing. and so notices have been sent to all property owners. The 45-day notice has passed, and it is appropriate then to hold the public hearing. Just briefly on the rate-setting environment, Prop 218 obviously requires a multi-step process for raising water rates. Tiered rates were approved earlier this year. Those tiered rates have been incorporated. Those also changed, and this will be the first time that those tiered rates go into effect. Our wholesale water rates have gone up dramatically, 25 and 22% over the next 2 years. That is the primary reason for the increases that need to be passed along to our customers. We also have water allocation and penalties. The allocation we received was for 85% of the amount of water that we have received historically. So far, we've done very well. We were actually down almost 30% in June, although that preceded our water year, which started July 1st. But we met 16% in July, 17% in August. So far, we're meeting our water targets, which are good, because if we don't, we are also subject to penalties, and those penalties are not built into our rates. So we're assuming that we're going to continue to meet those allocations through the year. We also, with that, are expecting lower water sales, and with lower water sales, you have a lower quantity across which to spread your fixed costs and capital projects, and so lower water sales also tend to increase rates for those fixed costs. And then finally, the operating reserves we have are very low. Our operating reserves are running at around 7%. The recommendation for that is to get the reserves up into about the 20% range. So with that, wholesale water rates, as your council is well aware, we get all our water through the Cayugas Municipal Water District, which receives our water from the Metropolitan District. We're looking at a 22% increase this January, followed by about a 25% increase in 2011. There's a number of factors that we've discussed with City Council before that are impacting these water rates, and I can go into those in more detail if Council likes. The wholesale rate increases are shown on the next slide with their tiers, but they do equate to a 52% increase in the cost that we're going to be paying for water between this year and January 2011. Now, our water rates have several components. I'll go through the components of the water bill. They include the base rate, which is a fixed charge on all customers' accounts, and then the quantity rate, which varies based upon the amount of water used. And then the quantity rate has several components, including operation, maintenance, capital, and for some of our residents and businesses, a lift charge. So just going through those components, our water base rate is what some people refer to as the ready-to-serve charge. That is the charge that covers all of the fixed costs. The goal is to recover about 30% of costs through the base rate. Currently, we're recovering about 16% of the costs. The advantage of having a little bit more in the base rate is that you don't have as variable of an income over the years, as weather has a tremendous influence on how much water gets sold. So at this point, about 84% of the revenue we received is completely variable depending on the water sold and very weather dependent. The next slide shows the base rates, the recommended base rate increases. The increases to the base rate is 44% in the first year, from $10 to $14.46 a month. About 88% of our customers fall in that first line, and then another $1.07 increase in year 2. And then this slide shows how we compare with base rates with other agencies in the area, with the high of around $25 and a low about $5. We're second to the last with about $10, showing that our base rates do tend to be a bit low, and that those do tend to fall behind if you don't continue to raise them with water service adjustments. The capital component, we're recommending a 25% increase from 25 cents to 30 cents per HCF in year 1, and no increase in year 2. We have taken a very strong look at our capital program. We've adjusted some of those projects. So some of the projects are actually approved by the City Council as part of the capital budget. We've moved some of those projects out. Other projects we've left in the budget, but they will be funded only if grant funding becomes available through some of the economic stimulus funds. We've got a number of grant opportunities available to us. So the message there for council is that we're trying very hard to moderate those capital increases. And then the final item is the quantity lifts charge. We have a separate pumping program that's a separate cost center, primarily includes Southern California Edison rates, but also staff time, maintenance time for pumps and pump repair, equipment and operation. That's shown going up by 2 cents in each year, from 13 cents currently to 15 cents in 09 and 17 cents in 2010. And so this next slide shows that all of those different components that make up the base rate. The current rate shown in the first column. The current rate includes a Cayugas Municipal Water District pass-through, which was passed through by the City Council mid-year last year. That pass-through is combined into the current rates, and so it doesn't show going forward. And then it shows a summary of the other ones that I just ran through. And then the combined residential quantity rate is shown, and that is the direct comparison. So currently it's $2.60. Under the new proposed rates, it would be a three-tier system, with the first tier at $2.70 for the first 15 units of water, and then $3.30 for the next 20 units, and then for 36 units at up $4.10. Now, those tiers, of course, are designed to encourage people to use the least amount of water possible by providing a financial incentive for lower water use. Using all these, the average residential water user using 23 HCF a month will see an increase of 15% effective November of this year and 12% effective July 2010. And it should also be noted that the allocation that we've received requires a 15% cutback to 85% of historical usage. So if the average user is successful and reduces their water use by 15%, then they will effectively see no increase. So their water bill will be the same after these increases as it was before. The monthly cost comparison is shown next. Using current rates is what we did for this cost comparison. It makes it a little more difficult to compare once different agencies start doing tiers, because they don't all structure their tiers identically, but it shows that we're about in the middle of the pack. We continue to be less than both California Water Service and Cal-Am, the two private purveyors in this city, and Oak Park Water. And we're very competitive with City of Simi Valley, and then Moore Park and Las Virgenes coming up below us. On the commercial side, similar to residential, in regards to the Cayugas municipal pass-through, they're currently paying $2.08. That gets combined, and so the combined commercial rate goes from $2.60 to $3.05, about a 17% increase year one, and a 16% increase in year two. And then finally, we have water connection fees. The water connection fees pay new developments cost of existing and future required infrastructure. Those fees are adjusted annually in accordance with the engineering cost index. That construction cost index for this year is 4.6%, and so all of those fees are adjusted accordingly. And then the water connection fee comparison follows and shows that Las Virgenes leads us. We are just ahead of Simi Valley. This is consistent with the city's policy of requiring development to pay its own way as it comes through. And then final comment on the process through 218 and the protests received that the city clerk had mentioned, and a number of phone calls that I received and Mr. Spurgeon and Ms. Arrieta received. There was one item out there that I wanted to mention, and it's a common misunderstanding with the use of the tiered rates. And that was the tiered rates that are shown are on a monthly basis, so the 0 to 15 is used per month. And some of the letters that are in council's packet, some of the phone calls we received, people are taking those and then using their current bi-monthly amount of water that they used. But if on a bi-monthly billing, those tiers actually double. So it's all shown monthly in the report. So 0 to 15 is the amount of water you get per month. You either have the amount that you have on your bill, or you double those tiers to apply that and plug it into the rate components as we have shown. So that was one of the issues we saw come through there. And with that, we're more than happy to answer any questions the City Council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Yeah, Ms. Irwin?
I sent you Mr. Watkins, thank you for that. I sent you an email this afternoon. I don't know if you got it. It was a resident. Okay. It was a resident that said that her bill was significantly higher than her friends' bills, who they had Cal-Am and California Water Service, and even the friends that had pools. So I had assumed, I mean, our rates are lower, so I assume her bill should be lower. Is that?
That's correct.
So what I had suggested to her is that we were going to be doing water audits. Are those in place already for residents that have questions about the amount of water they're using?
Yes.
So what should you do, just contact?
Well, one of the best things for her to do is call us, because what we found with a lot of people who spent time on the phone with is that there was either misunderstanding on their bill, or their neighbor might be receiving a monthly bill and they're receiving a bi-monthly bill. There's any number of things that have occurred as we've talked to folks, and most people we've talked with, once we explained what we were doing, what all came about, there was a much higher level of understanding. For people that are doing absolutely everything they can do, their bill is what it is, then we do offer a water audit, which includes having a building inspector come to their house. So look at both inside and outside water use, make recommendations on how they can use less water, which is the best way to reduce your bill.
And how would residents contact the city to inquire about their bills and inquire about a water audit?
For inquiry about both the bills and the water, you can call the General Public Works phone number, which is 449-2400.
And then the other issue that she had brought up is that there was an unfair burden on homeowners as opposed to businesses. How would you answer that?
Yeah, the tiered rates do not apply to commercial accounts. And to make sure the businesses are still paying their share, what we did is we looked at the total amount of water sold within the city, and you look at the proportion that's currently being used by commercial, and that proportion stays the same going into the future. So the commercial, from a revenue perspective, the commercial percentage is the same in the future as it has been in the past. And the reason we haven't done tiered rates, and we actually polled a number of other cities in the state to find out if they were doing tiered rates on commercial, and they're not, is because commercial businesses, their water use oftentimes depends really upon the success of the business. So a restaurant, for example, as their business kind of ebbs and flows, and especially during these times, the amount of water use can vary dramatically. Other businesses, if they're manufacturing business, the same thing can happen. And so we don't want to punish a commercial business, for example, because they happen to be successful. And so commercial businesses, they typically, with the water they're using, they don't have as much variability as they don't have as much discretion as the residential homeowner does. So and they don't have the Tier 1 available to them. So the residents, their Tier 1 rate is lower than the commercial has available to them.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Watkins.
Additional questions? Mr. Fox.
I just want to pick up on what Mr. Irwin talked a little bit about. I've received a number of phone calls and inquiries just in the community of people asking why such a dramatic increase. And I'd like you to explain a little bit more about the water audit service, and particularly those that have, and we have a lot of these in the various areas of the community where folks have extensive landscaping, large lawns, maybe a swimming pool, and they made these home improvements. Either they bought into the home when they bought the home, or they made these home improvements candidly when water rates were relatively inexpensive, and now they have all this landscaping, large lots. Do we have some type of program where we can go out and provide some directions, some suggestions on how they can minimize their water bill while at the same time not letting, several $100,000 worth of landscaping and pool and all this other stuff go, unmaintained?
Yeah, certainly those with the very large lot, and especially those that have a large lot that is extensively landscaped, are going to see the biggest impact under tiered rates. No question about it. And yeah, through the audit process, we can make some recommendations. It does end up being a bit of a personal choice whether people want to, for example, remove amount of turf or convert sprinkler systems to drip type systems. Where we can really help is what we find is that a lot of people have a landscape maintenance contractor that's maintaining it, and their job is to keep it green, and so they really try to lay the water to it. And so what we try to do is recommend how much water is really needed. A great example is Gardens of the World across the street, and they've kind of volunteered to be an example for us. They're in full compliance with the city's current water ordinance, watering only 3 days a week, watering less than the 15 minutes per cycle. And these are professionals, and what they're saying is that the biggest mistake most people make is overwatering, trying to put too much water to it. And so they've really tried to be an example in this community of an area that's known for its gardens. That's their business, and yet they're using less water, and they're also not hosing down their hard surfaces anymore. They're sweeping. They're really trying to kind of be the showpiece for us. And so we point those types of things out. We try to get people kind of ratchet down the landscaping and find out that it does survive.
All right. And then the obvious question, I think, is what would happen if the city chose not to move forward with the increase in rates?
Well, ultimately, our reserves are sitting at about 7% right now, and so if we don't move forward with an increase, our wholesale prices are going to be increased regardless. That's January 1st, and so we would fairly quickly deplete our reserves and find ourselves in a losing situation.
And eventually have to come back and
raise them even higher.
Right.
Correct.
I think that's a point that needs to be stated out there. The staff does a good job of presenting the charts and figures, but to your average homeowner out there, they see, whoa, an increase of 25%, 18%. That's a significant increase, and people recognize, I think, everywhere what's going on with the economy and unemployment and everything else. So I think the more public information that we can provide, and the staff's done a good job in this area already. I don't know what TOTV is doing things, a mailer, in the water bills, some of those things for public education, I think will help a long way. That the city is not this isn't a tax increase, so to speak, where the city's trying to create revenue. It's a service that we provide, and we need to be able to maintain the ability to provide that service. All right, thanks very much.
Ms. Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Watkins. I have a question regarding the businesses. If we are not applying the same tiered system to commercial entities, what are we doing to encourage water conservation?
Within the commercial entities, they're continuing to see a flat block rate structure, and their rate increases are actually higher than the residential. So they're seeing a 17% increase the first year, 16% the second year. And so, for a lot of these businesses, the water bills are a large part of their line item, and so they've got quite a bit of incentive to reduce already. We're also talking to, we've identified who our largest users are. We've gone out and talked with them, and we actually do one-on-ones with those folks for water use and trying to get them to conserve, because obviously bigger bang for the buck with those biggest water users out there. So I think they've got the same financial incentive as residential does.
Thank you.
That's it? Claudia? Thank you very much. At this time, we have some public comment cards, so let's begin with those. First speaker is Tony Doles, followed by Rico Lagatuda, followed by Robert Hodson. And as before, I would ask the subsequent speakers to align themselves down here at the reserve seats. Please give us your name and city of residence. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rico Lagatuda. I live in 932 Rosario, here in Thousand Oaks. I came here to discuss a number of issues, but this gentleman kind of threw me a curve on some of the comments he made. One of the things I want to talk about was a gallon of water is a gallon of water is a gallon of water. It doesn't make any difference whether a gallon of water is used by a single-family residence, whether it's used by a commercial property, or whether it's used by multiple-family residents. It's still a gallon of water. And yet the single-family residences are being penalized. This gentleman here stated that the block fees for commercial property is because they have to make a profit or something to that extent. Single-family residents, are we supposed to say, hey, we're going to increase your water rate structure to a 3-tier structure, and if you happen to lose your mortgage because we decided to increase your water structure, so be it, but we protected the commercial property? Are we going to say to the single-family residents that because of the fact that we increase your water rate structure, we did protect the multiple family rental structures in the city so that they can make a profit, but you, the single families, are going to pick up the burden of the cost of the water of the state of California, the state of, or the city of Thousand Oaks? He talked about reducing rates and said that if everybody conserves 15%. I went through my water bill from last year to this year, and I already saved 20% from last year because of the 15% the state of California said that we had non-availability of water. City of Thousand Oaks has promoted it. The Acorn's been promoted, saying we need to all cut back and do our jobs. I've already cut back 20%, and he's saying I should be able to cut back another 15%. There's not enough water in the system for me to use the water for household usage, let alone watering my plants. There's only so much water you can cut back if you happen to live in the Thousand Oaks area and some of the larger properties. People in the Canal Oaks area that have half-acre lots, the city of Thousand Oaks has said, no, you cannot reduce the size of your lots. You must have at least a half-acre. We can't go down 30 acres and put more housing on there. And yet we're telling these same people that the $40,000, $50,000, and $60,000, $100,000 you spend on landscaping, forgetting the hardscape, just the landscape, close the pool and fill it in, but forgetting the swimming pool, just the hardscape alone, let it die because you can't afford to water it. Then he turned around, and if what he said is correct, if what he said is correct, if the notice that was sent out applied to a monthly rate, the 15 units, and not the billing rate, which is not what the notice said, then the notice was wrong and should be retracted, and this whole meeting should be called off. because that notice implied that it was based on a unit fee structure. When I took a look at the unit fee structure based on what I was using this last month, 69-day cycle, not a 61-day cycle from last year, but a 69-day cycle, which is automatically going to put me over into the above the 35 units. So therefore I'm paying on Tier 3. It's going to increase my water bill 100%. 2 years ago, or excuse me, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, before I became a resident of the city of Thousand Oaks, lovely city by the way, but before I became a resident, people increased the water rates. But there was nothing in there that said that, hey, when we have plenty of water, because of the shortage 15 years ago, your rates are going to come down. I didn't see anything in this proposal either that said because of the water shortage, which is probably not a real shortage, as Hannity pointed out on his television show the other night. It's an availability shortage. Okay. And because of the availability shortage, we're saying single homeowners, there's an availability shortage in California, therefore we're going to penalize you. That's unfair. You know, and the other thing that's unfair is the notice that went out and saying, hey, if you look at the responses, that there's not very many people here, and there was only 1% of the people that did respond, and we're saying that because there's only 1% of the people that did respond under Proposition 218, that really it's not the majority of the people. Come on, folks. You know, you've been here long enough doing this job. You're hired to protect the people. Just a little bit. And I know I'm a little bit wound up. Just a little bit. Just listen to it. But you're here to protect the people and let the people speak and let the people have an opportunity to keep the city beautiful the way it was when they started landscaping and doing what they were doing. And now we're saying to them, no, you can't do it anymore. Totally unfair. Totally unfair.
Pardon me, are you Rico or Nick?
I'm Rico.
Thank you very much.
Nick is my brother.
Oh, I figured it was related somehow.
He doesn't really claim me, but he is my brother.
Okay. We got no response from Tony Dulles. I assume that he's gone? Okay, thank you. Robert Hodgson, followed by Nick Lagatuda.
I'm Robert Hodgson. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Followed by Sandra Duke. Thank you very much.
Mayor, council members, I'm Bob Hodgson. I'm a 32-year resident of the city of Thousand Oaks. I speak out against the proposed rate increase for 4 reasons. Number one, the rate structure that was sent out in the notice. My bill would go up 42% in November and an additional 12% next July for a total of 59%. Mr. Walker clarified that the notice is incorrect, that it's a 2-month cycle versus a 1-month. So that would necessarily, using his numbers, assuming the notice is correct, that would be at 2,300 cubic feet per month. That's a 30% increase over 1 year in a 2-step increase, as opposed to a 60%, still a 30% increase. Pretty large increase in 1 year. Number two, in this proposed rate increase, there are a number of capital projects. Most of us use long-term financing to finance capital projects, and you pay them off over the useful life. Most of us do not use current revenues to pay off capital projects. And I'm guessing that the rate increase associated with paying off those capital projects, when those capital projects are paid off, the rates won't come down. My example, the analogy there is the Golden Gate Bridge. It was built, the revenues of at the toll gates were supposed to pay for it. They did, about 17 times over now. It is now a revenue producer for the city. That's cool, but my rating, I'm paying for it by my water. Number three, this rate increase is onerous on us property owners. We all have large lots. The city, I mean, that's what we do. We have large lots, and most of us have some minimal landscaping. I, like Mr. Lagatuda, have cut back my water usage drastically, but we do need some water to maintain our yards and keep the beauty of Thousand Oaks. If we don't use that water, then the place looks like not good. So this whole rate increase thing is exacerbated by the tiered rate structure. And then number 4, and probably the one that upsets me the most, is we've been through this drill before. You propose a rate increase because the sales are down, and you got to have some money to come in to maintain the water company. Recognize that, understand that. All businesses have cycles where you lose revenue and you gain revenue. We went through this a couple of times before, notably in the late 70s. We had a drought. We had a drastic price increase so that the water company could maintain a level tier, and those rates never went down in the following 2 years, and we had huge El Nino years. So I suspect that these rate increases are going to continue on like that, even if we start getting some rainfall. That's it. Thank you. I did that in 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Very nicely done, Mr. Hodgson. Thank you. Mr. Lagatuda, don't forget your water. You're paying a lot for it, you know. Thank you. Nick Lagatuda, followed by Sandra Duke, followed by Michael Adams. Good evening.
I'm Nick Lagatuda, obviously Rick's brother, Rico's brother, and I've been living in Thousand Oaks for 29 years. I have a very succinct statement or comment, more of a question than anything else. Given that the obligatory requirements of Proposition 218 have not been met, i.e. not enough written protestations have been received, is anything you've heard tonight or will hear tonight going to make any impact or change anybody's mind with respect to the fact that the rates are going to be raised anyway? So if it is, this to me seems to be a exercise of futility if they're going to be raised anyway. So, I mean, we're speaking, and in your heart of hearts, if you say, Nick, go home because it's a foregone conclusion, then so be it. I hope you at least take it into consideration that I've been through 3 droughts. The rates have gone up because people have conserved, sir, and because the revenues have declined, and once the revenues got back up again, the rates never went back down. So, anyway, I thank you very much. Please take into consideration that we are in a recessionary period, as you all well know. A lot of people are losing their jobs, homes are being foreclosed, lawns are going brown, and by the way, it also causes some of those fires because you got brown areas around your house that catches fire rather quickly. So, thank you very much, and I hope you consider the fact that we are people are.
Thank you very much for being with us. Sandra Duke, followed by Michael Adams, followed by Elaine Boydston.
Hi, I'm Sandy Duke. I live in Thousand Oaks, California. I would like to submit to you that I don't think that this is a water shortage issue. I think it's a pure revenue issue. I don't understand why it's a discriminatory rate selection for single family versus commercial versus multiple family. I have a larger piece of property in Thousand Oaks. I have put in artificial turf. I have poured yards and yards and yards of concrete. I have changed a swimming pool into a sunken garden. I have put in drought-resistant plants. I have done everything I know to do, and my bill is going to double. And I'm speaking over $400 a month on an acre of property. It's a mortgage payment. I don't know why the rates are allowed to go up and up and up, and we need to have capital investments. When we left Cal American, we had capital investment hike. What happened to that capital investment? Now we've got another capital investment hike. When do we get a break? The homeowners' backs are being broken. The 3-tier structure, I don't know what you can do on 15 units in a month, but I have full loads of wash in my washer. I wash my dishes 3 times a week so the dishwasher is full. We take 5-minute showers. We drink the glasses of water we pour. And we are always excessively over 15 units, and I haven't gone outside yet. I would like for you folks to consider having a flat rate, put it on a tier basis, fine. The allocation needs to be doubled in the base tier, okay? I really don't want to fund Metropolitan Water District's pension plan and salary increases. Not my job. And if this is a true conservation issue, then the restaurants and multifamily residents should also be encouraged to conserve by sticking it to them. We are not the only users in the city. Our neighborhood is going brown, not going green, and it's a fire hazard. We live in the hills. Go take a drive. The people that live in our area can't afford to water their yards. It's very nice that less than 15 minutes 3 times a week takes care of the plants. That's what I water. I've got all kinds of water-tolerant, drought-tolerant plants. Oleanders, artificial turf. It doesn't get much more drought-resistant than that, okay? All I'm saying is that when I came here, my water bill was $100, $110 every 2 months. I'm now going to be at $400 every 2 months, $440. When's it going to stop? Give us a break, you guys. We really need the help, and we need the revenue. If that's what this is about, we need that load shared equally with commercial, multifamily, single family. Everybody, I've cut my water bill at least 25%. Can't cut it. I don't know where else to cut it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duke. Michael Adams, followed by Elaine Boydston, followed by Karen Lyman. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Glancy and council members. Last time I spoke on water rate increases, I predicted if nothing is done fundamentally with the way water is acquired by the city, that we will have runaway rate increases. And unfortunately, my prediction was dead on. Metropolitan Water District is increasing water rates at over 21% a year to the city of Thousand Oaks. That means that if you were to increase the water rates to the customers here in the city of Thousand Oaks, that for somebody with a $200 bill, in 10 years their bill is going to be $1,345. If this keeps going on, in 20 years, their bill for 2 months of water will be $9,051. Obviously, conservation alone cannot fix something like that. We can't sit around and continue to do nothing. Now, I have a few reservations about the proposal. One is Bartle Wells Associates says lower water consumption means a higher unit cost of water is necessary to simply reach the same level of revenue. Well, that's a bad assumption because you don't need the same level of revenue if you're lowering water consumption, because part of that revenue is variable cost. They used they took a look and calculated what the lift charges should be. And based on their calculations, in the next 2 years, the lift charges are 63% of the total pumping budget. By my calculations, that means they're expecting a 50% increase in electric rates in the next 2 years. I don't buy it. We don't seem to be sharpening our pencils when it comes to salaries and benefits. In 5 years, from 06 to 2011, those salaries are going to go up 37%. Just in 07 to 08, they went up 18%. In the next 2 years, they're going to go up 15% by the budget. Now, maybe they won't go up that much, but if history has its way, it seems like that's where it's headed. We need to absolutely start looking at other areas where we can get water. We cannot continue being a hostage to the Metropolitan Water District. For instance, in 2009, our cost of water is $778 per acre foot. 2011, that's going to be $1,145 per acre foot. Now, San Diego is building a desalination plant. They're getting their water for $900 an acre foot. That means by 2010, if we had a desalination plant running at the efficiency of San Diego, we would not be in this mess. We could start putting a cap on these water rates. We would have competition for Metropolitan Water District. We would no longer be a hostage to every drought that comes along or every judge that decides that we are not deserving of this water. So I'm asking everybody who ran for office in this city, were you the ones that said, I will fight for you? Because if you were, this is the time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Not bad. Okay, Elaine Boydston, followed by Karen Lyman, followed by Kathleen Duran, I believe. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Elaine Boydston. I've lived in Thousand Oaks for 44 years. The property my husband and I own at 1653 Hauser Circle is 1 acre. We have minimal landscaping on that acre. It's only around our house. My neighbor on his acre has extensive landscaping, almost every square inch of the property, as well as a large swimming pool. I don't have a swimming pool. We've not done the homework that these other speakers have and calculated how much our water bill is going to go up, but right now we're paying about $400 every 2 months for water. My son who lives in Yorba Linda pays about $40 a month for water. I have a question that I haven't seen addressed anywhere else, and that is about, I have 3 horses on my acre. I cannot cut their water usage. I could let my lawn die, but my horses have to have water to drink. They drink about 12 to 18 gallons per horse per day. So I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to afford to keep them any longer if I cannot afford to give them any water. So I have, in Los Angeles, they're making provisions for people who have horses and livestock. I have not seen anything about different rates for water for horses for the residents of Thousand Oaks. Is anything being addressed?
You go ahead and ask your question. At the end of public testimony, staff will respond to questions.
Okay, that's all I have is that question.
Okay. Thank you very much. Karen Lyman, followed by Kathleen Duran.
Mayor, council members, I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and we cannot afford this. I am a mother of 4. I have done everything on this list. We have been here for 6 years. We cannot afford this. You have got to fight for us and for our families. I do everything that these people have done. I have decreased our water. I do everything by the book, and we cannot afford it. I've gone through my bills, and last year there was an increase in the water rate. What did you do with that increase? It was a 20% increase. Where did that money go? Now they're asking for another increase. Why can't they decrease it? Why are we constantly increasing our water rates? I just want to keep it very short. We cannot afford this. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Kathleen Duran. Please state your name. I think I stepped on it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kathleen Doran. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, have been for 17 years. I am here because I was a little bit shocked to see that the base rate was going up 50%, and that the other rates were taking everybody up at least 25% or more. We also have cut back. Right now, I just killed off my parkway grass. Went out there, poisoned it off. Going to take it all out. We've cut back on everything that we can do. We have 2 children. Everybody's got to take showers, boatloads of laundry. Everything is done according to need. I'm not sure how you've assessed what the base rates are or the number of people that you assess it on. I'd be very curious to find that out. The biggest issue I have is that inasmuch as we conserve the water as requested, your rates go down, or your income goes down, right? You've created a declining income. So by us doing what it is you've asked us to do, you're now turning around and penalizing us and saying, well, we want you to use less of our product, but we're going to charge you more for a product that you have to have, and thereby creating a situation where it's a de facto tax.
Ms. Doran, address your comments to up here if you would.
Okay, certainly.
And we'll take it out on them later. Thanks.
Okay. Anyway, the whole issue, basically, as I said, it constitutes a de facto tax. The average minimum tax will represent at least 25% for the people in Thousand Oaks, at least. Several people have commented on how the burden is being placed on the residents. Essentially, it is, in that we do have the tier. A business, as their business grows, their use of product grows, they should also have that tier affect them as well. Yes, businesses do fluctuate. I know when I buy product from my business, it fluctuates. That burden should be carried by everybody. And I guess the biggest thing we all feel is a sense of hopelessness. It's going on everywhere. Edison is raising your rates. Edison is raising our rates. They burn something down, they want to charge us for it. The gas company wants to raise their rates. Fuel charges are going up everywhere. But there comes a time when all of us reach a point where we've had enough, and we do start to stand up, and that is what is going on now. We are hoping that you will listen. We are hoping that there's something that you can do to divert this. My sense is that there isn't, and I'll be very disappointed if there isn't. But since we've started standing up, I have a feeling a lot of us are going to stay standing up and continue to start to make a little bit more noise about the situations, and hopefully somewhere along the way maybe we can stop them. But if you need to raise the rates, I understand it now. But as soon as it starts to rain, I expect it to come down. And if Department of Water and Power, Metropolitan Water District doesn't bring it down, then I would expect you to ask them to bring it back down, to negotiate on the contracts and say, we did what you asked when there was a shortage of product. The product is now plentiful again. Bring the rate back down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doran. I appreciate it. Let me ask anyone in the audience who has not filled out a protest card to please do so and give it to the city clerk. With that, Mr. Watkins, there are a fair number of questions that were raised. Would you please respond?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to. Let me go through the notes I have and see if I can answer some of the questions. One of the things I didn't mention during my presentation, or a couple of things maybe that I need to mention that might help to clarify. We do work very closely with the Cayugas Municipal Water District, tracking their rates, and also with Metropolitan. We've had the general manager of Metropolitan, Jeff Keitlinger, came out, met at Cayugas. We had the opportunity to go through it with him. Also Brian Thomas, their chief financial officer. So we've been chewing on their ears quite a bit, letting them know, because we are the retailer. So we have the customers directly. They do not, and we don't believe that they do hear from us as much as they need to. And so we've been working very close with Cayugas and Metropolitan to let them know about the impact on our residents, the impact on our businesses, and from a very broad perspective, it's not good for the community or the state to have the water situation that we've got now. And it's gotten the attention of state officials. They tried to address it last week, were unsuccessful, and it's got the attention of the federal officials these days, the entire California water situation. So these escalating rates aren't good for us. They're not good for the community as a whole. We recognize that, and we are trying to work on that. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that purchased water costs are about 2/3 of our water budget. Our water budget is an enterprise budget that is not used for anything else. So none of the money that comes in through water bills or through sewer bills is used for any general city purposes. It's a separately accounted for area of the city's budget. It's an enterprise fund, and so none of those funds are able to be moved into or out of into any other city areas. So it does operate by itself. Similar to the question that Mr. Fox asked earlier, then, if we see an increase in those rates and we don't pass those along, it puts us in a very precarious situation, especially when purchased water is about 2/3 of our overall budget. So one of the other items is that we're actually kind of slow coming to the table with tiered rates. Most of the other agencies in the county do tiered rates. All of the other large agencies do tiered rates, and that's the change we're going to now, and that has been done to reflect the need for conservation. The billing notices that we sent out, all the notices that were sent out were done correctly. They all very clearly stated monthly rates. I can't recall directly if that was the requirement of Prop 218 that is noticed on a monthly basis. I'm not, but the notice that we sent out to all our residents was very clear, and it was correct. It was monthly. We do happen to charge on a bi-monthly period, but all of the rates are all and all of the rates that have been adopted by council by ordinance here for 30 years have always been adopted on a monthly basis, and that's consistent with the notices that were sent out. Let's see. Let me address the need for an alternative water source, because I think that is interesting, and it's something that we're really in the very preliminary stages on. But the history of Thousand Oaks is very similar to the history of California as a whole. And until water became available through the State Water Project, this city was not able to incorporate or able to develop. The city has scattered wells here and there. All of those wells are fairly low producing and of fairly low water quality, and they just simply weren't capable of hosting the population that we currently host. And so it wasn't until the availability of state water that the city was available and able to incorporate. And that is our only source of water. We are in preliminary discussions working with the Cayugas Municipal Water District in the city of Camarillo. There is a large basin of water that's in the Las Posas area. It's not salt water, but it is brackish, shallow groundwater that we're looking at building a desalter for. That would be a project that would be jointly funded by us and in Camarillo, maybe other cities. But that would be the first time that the city had its own water source again. Probably be 5 years before we're able to work through the entire agreements with the other agencies, get an EIR done, and get a project built. But we are working down that path now, recognizing that we need some greater independence from Metropolitan, so we are moving in that direction. The question in regards to horse properties, there is no specific provision within the city's water ordinance in regards to horse properties. In general, horse properties that are not landscaped use less water than a fully landscaped property. So oftentimes the horses, they'll have arenas, they have their stalls. The amount of water used for the horses and the amount of water that the horses drink is generally less than the same piece of property if it was fully landscaped and irrigated. And on another question in regards to base rates, and I did mention our base rates, an increase in base rates. I showed that we're very low on our base rates. The way the base rates work within the water industry, and there's a lot of discussion about our revenue variability due to drought and due to other reasons. Because of that variability, it is nice to have healthy reserves, and in the past the city had those reserves. What those reserves do is that in the years that you lose money, you're able to draw that out of your reserves. And we are also in the past able to moderate rate increases. So in the past, some of the rate increases that came through, we actually either delayed them or we were able to pass them through at a smaller amount by drawing down our reserves. But unfortunately, with several years of these increases, we no longer have the reserves to do that. Base rates are what then allow you to cover your fixed portion of your costs, so that those costs aren't all subject to the variability. So the base rates we have shown are factored into the overall rate increases that we presented to council. So it's not, as the base rates go up, the amount that you increase the quantity actually goes down, the total then stays the same. But you're trying to make a certain percentage of your revenue fixed. And the goal within, as recommended by the California Urban Water Conservation Council, is to have 30% of your revenues on base rates. Currently, we're about 16%, and with the increases after 2 years, we'll only be at about 19%. So we're still going to be on the low side, but we're at least moving in the right direction. And I think I covered all of the questions that I had written down there, but certainly happy to answer any questions that I missed.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Mr. Fox?
Yeah, Mark, a couple of questions. First, the lift rate, that's a rate that's passed on to everybody, is that correct?
That's incorrect. I think about 60% of our residential customers pay a lift rate, and they pay a lift depending upon the elevation that they're at. Some customers pay two.
All right. That's important to know. So not everybody's paying the lift rate.
Correct.
The other question I have is that in your report you talk about the average, try to give you a page here. Yeah, the average single-family home, I think has 23. What size lot is that? In terms of the tiered...
Yeah, the way that's calculated, actually, we take the total volume of water used by single-family residences and divide it by the total number of single-family accounts. So we just take the total amount of water used by single-family divided by the total accounts, comes up with the average water usage. So we don't have an average lot size.
Okay. Well, where I'm getting at is that I'm guessing, based on the testimony we had, most of the folks that provided testimony tonight live and own very large lots. Now, I don't know how many 1-acre lots we have in Thousand Oaks, but we have a lot of half-acre lots. And I guess my question would be, has staff done any kind of calculation relative to driving, for example, through Conejo Oaks, half-acre lots? This is what I was alluding to earlier. Mature landscape, it's been around a long time. Any kind of reasonable calculation for what these increases actually equate to in terms of monthly water bills? Because I don't think, well, can you answer that question first?
What we did is look at kind of a range of water users. And so certainly the situation you're talking about, people that have a half-acre lot or a 1-acre lot, especially if it's fully landscaped, are going to see a greater increase than the average person is going to see.
Okay.
A low water user is going to see...
What does that mean, though? When you say, and that's the question I have, and I don't know if you have an answer, but I think council really should have that answer. What does that mean to that person when it's going to be an increase, but what are we really talking about?
Well, yeah, it's hard to answer because it's so variable. It just depends upon their water use. I mean, at this point, you're paying per unit of water. You know, the good part about that is that you've got control over how much you use. But I can't give you an average to say on a Tier 3 user what their average increase is going to be.
Here's the issue, and I am going to try to do a little bit of advocating, is you really don't have control over what you use, because it's not a reasonable expectation that you're going to let your lawn die. It's not a reasonable expectation that you're going to let, $40,000 worth of landscaping die. I don't believe it's reasonable, even though somebody did it, that you're going to drain your pool. And so I just think, we heard testimony. I'm not questioning the testimony, but to me, I think the city needs to be at least aware, in real dollars, if somebody's water bill is going to go from, $200 per billing cycle to $400, that's a dramatic increase to occur with really no notice. And I'm not knocking the city's notice process. I think my point is that that's a 50 or maybe 100% increase, depending, and that's what I'm asking staff. Have we done calculations on not the worst case scenario, with due respect to the folks that own that have an acre of property? I'm not discounting it, but we have a lot of half-acre lots and large lots in many different areas of the city. Incidentally, is this basically going to be the same for Lynn Ranch? I know they're not part of Thousand Oaks, but are those folks looking at the same increases through the county?
CalAm and Cal Water are both have implemented tiered rates, and they're both going through the process right now of doing rate increases.
Okay.
So we don't have their final numbers to say this is what they're going to be. Let me answer part of your previous question a bit. Just looking at pure rates, we did do a comparison, page 108 on your packet, where we use what we call the low, average, and high water user. And the high water user we used was 40 HCF. And so, whether that represents your half-acre lot or greater, I don't know. And so it shows those increases for the larger water user being 35%. If you look at the current rate, which is $2.60 per HCF, and the future highest rate you would pay would be $4.10, that is a 57% increase. Now, that 57% doesn't take into account the fact that you have those two lower tiers below you also. But I guess I can use that as a way to answer that nobody should see their water bill double. The absolute maximum that they would see if they're a very, very high water user would be closer to that 50% number, assuming that the two lower tiers don't factor in much because their Tier 3 is so high. So nobody's going to see their rates double. The most they would approach would be in the 50% range. And that's if they're a very high user.
And I'm reading on page 108, the high water user is 40 HCF.
Correct.
Okay. And you would consider that a very high water use. So you guys are out in the community. Picture the lush landscaping lot in Caneo Oaks. I drive through that neighborhood almost, frequently. They would be in the 50 or 40 range.
Right, that's what we call a high user. Then there's some that would be very high. They're using a lot, bigger lot or just that much more lush, and they could be using even more.
Okay, and so looking at the report here, you're looking at, what, was it 223.46 for November of 2009?
That's correct.
And then 2010, it would go to 251.
Correct. So You'd be looking at a 35% increase this year and then 12% next year.
All right. With respect to billing, I don't know, it just occurred to me, during the rainy season, if you can really say that we have that in California.
We'll pretend like we do.
Yeah, exactly. So, we get maybe, but we certainly have times of the year where the water use should drop, just simply because of the change in temperatures and everything else. For those properties that are in Tier 3, is it possible to do a beard billing program to where the water rates are going to be lower because of use, therefore they can make up for it later in the year for when their water rates are higher? Because again, I think I hear what staff's saying, but common sense is going to dictate. Folks are, I think it's unreasonable for us to tell folks, you need to let your landscaping die or fill your pool up. That's just not going to happen. And if you have a family of 2 or 3, people are going to take, assuming they use all the conservation programs that we put in place, it's just not reasonable to say that people are going to not have a dramatic increase in their water bills. And again, I point out that this is something new. They didn't choose this. This is now being imposed on them, unfortunately, by a number of forces that are not within our control. Do we have some flexibility with that?
So this, what I'm thinking about is what the gas company does for some people who have high heating bills is they do a fixed rate throughout the year so that they're still paying the amount of quantity they use, but they average it over 12 months, and so they kind of fix it over that whole year. Is that, or are you talking about actually banking water?
I don't know.
You didn't use
I'm just looking for staff to be creative, because we heard from folks that basically said, we can't afford this.
Right.
Yet, in December, November, and January, their water bill will be lower. And even though the folks aren't happy, I think they recognize when the staff is recommending a 25% reserve, we're at 7%, we're not going to be reckless and irresponsible, because we're just going to come back and have to do something even more drastic. And just so you folks know, you've seen glaring examples at the state level and our neighbors in Los Angeles when their elected bodies kick the can. So we don't do that in Thousand Oaks. But by the same token, I think staff should try to look at some flexibility with respect to some mechanism in the bill, particularly for those folks in Tier 3, where they give some relief.
Okay. I'd be happy to work with our building folks and see what they can come up with. We can also poll other cities, see what they do, and see if there's a program out there that works.
Right.
We'd be happy to look into that.
And then the other question I have is, and I don't know, are there cities that have reserves below 7%?
I don't know. I don't have that information. I'm not sure how their other reserves are sitting. As we've talked to other agencies, and Metropolitan is one of them, this is a similar situation others have found themselves in, is that as these increases have come in, they've started to work on their reserves down to a point where they realize that they can't do that. So in general, as I've talked with other agencies, including our wholesalers, they've been seeing their reserves go down. I don't know to what level they are.
And can you cover again, it was addressed by a couple of speakers, why the tiered rate doesn't apply to commercial properties?
Sure, and again, what I said, this is one where we talked to all the other water purveyors also just to find out what they were doing, and none of them had done the tiered rates for commercial. And that's because Tier 1 in a lot of ways represents interior use on the average home, because we're assuming that you have less discretionary water being used on the inside than you do outside. Most of commercial use is therefore kind of inside. You have less discretionary use. Some businesses are very water intensive, and again, we don't want to punish them per se, because their business happens to go up because they're successful. And so they're paying a flat block rate structure, but the flat rate they have is higher than the residential Tier 1. They don't have benefit of that either. And their increase is going to be 17%. So it's actually more than the average residential user will see. Their overall percentage of revenues within the commercial sector will stay the same.
Okay, so their increase is 17% at a flat rate, so it's not as though they're not getting an increase. It would be virtually very difficult to measure, for example, a restaurant, the fluctuation in water. So we're just going across the board a 17% increase for that type of business, for example.
Right.
Right. I don't know how staff can get back to the council. I don't even know if there's an interest with other council members with respect to the billing issue, but I see that as, at least while small, it is something that may help, particularly those families that are going to clearly be in Tier 3. They have no choice. It's not something from my perspective they brought on themselves. I don't know that people could anticipate 10, 15 years ago the water rates were going to go where they're going. And incidentally, for the record, if my recollection is correct, staff has actually reduced our water bills in the past, have they not?
Yeah, I know that we at one point reduced wastewater. I can't recall whether we did water or not.
Right, so just for folks in the community to know, we do pass on savings back to the community when we're able to do that, and I know that we've done that in the past. But I do think that we ought, if we can, if it doesn't create too much of an accounting nightmare, if it's feasible is what I'm saying, that I'd like staff to take a very hard look at particularly those properties in Tier 3, but we have to make it available to everyone, that in some way the billing can be averaged out so it's not such a big burden, for example, during the summer months, where the water use will clearly be higher, and 3 or 4 or 5 months of a $400 or $500 water bill that might normally be $200 or $300, that's a big difference. And I don't know what numbers that we're dealing with. That is a dramatic difference. So I'd like you to take a look at that.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Ms. Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions about MWD, but first is a technical question. Is HCF the same as CCF? It is. Okay. I would find it very difficult to believe that any single-family household would be able to, single-family, 4 members in a household, to be able to run a household with 10 HCFs. I find that impossible. I don't know how any single-family household would be able to do that. Regarding the Metropolitan Water District, have we, when you met with them, were you able to find out whether they would be able to pass on savings to the customer once there is enough water, should there be rainfall?
Yeah, part of, and this is an item I guess I didn't cover as much in my initial presentation, part of, or a large part of what Metropolitan is seeing is a decrease in the amount of water being sent through the state water project. And so what really happens with that water is we pay for it twice. And I say we, I mean Southern California, the Metropolitan Water Agency, because we're paying for the construction of the state water project. We're still paying for that. We're also paying what's called a take-or-pay provision, which means we pay for the water that we're going to get through the state water project, whether we get it or not. What's happening now is we're not getting it. And so right now we're paying both for the state water project and for the water that we're not getting through the state water project. And then in addition, what Metropolitan does on our behalf is they have to go out and find other water. And inevitably they pay more for that water. So that's a large part of the increase that we're seeing right now is their cost in going out and finding water so that our pipes continue to be full. So the answer is yes. If the state water project can be fixed so that water is flowing once again, I would expect that we'd be able to see those rates come down. Because one of the other things that's happening to us right now is that we're only allowed, and there's only really, I think, 3 months out of the year where there are no limitations on the state water project, and those 3 months end up being like July, August, September, when there's no water to send anyway. But what we were able to do in the past when water was available is those are the months where we would bank additional water in Southern California. So we would actually be able to fill reservoirs, fill underground storage facilities and others, and that we're just not able to do anymore. And so as the overall water picture really within California gets fixed, I would hope that the water costs would go down. There's no reason that they shouldn't.
You mentioned that some lawmakers attempted to tackle this problem. What are our options as a municipality to protest the increases by the Metropolitan Water District?
Well, certainly we have the ability to go to their hearings. Their hearings are open just like city council hearings are. In general, we've been represented by Cayugas at their hearings, and then we've gone to the Cayugas hearings. But we've talked to Cayugas in the past to find out how helpful that would be to have us going down, and what they offered to do, and they did, is they came to us. And so we've had the general manager come up here and hear our concerns, our issues, and we've shared real life scenarios with them. We've done the same thing with our chief financial officer. We've had him up to multiple meetings, and so we'll continue down that path. But certainly the whole letter writing, we've talked to state assembly members, on and on. I mean, this is an issue, not just for this city, but really for Southern California. And so it's gotten a lot of attention.
So there isn't anything like the PUC where we could lodge our complaint?
The PUC only has control over the private water purveyors, and so we do that. There isn't
anything similar to that for water supply?
Well, it's the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Water Resources.
And why have we not taken any steps to take it to that level?
Oh, we have, actually.
We have.
And they've been, I'd say primarily through Cayugas. And
when you said that you were talking to Metropolitan Water District and the chief financial officer, it sounded to me that they were coming out here to speak to you on a more intimate basis rather than at a formal hearing. Did I misunderstand?
When they're coming out here, they've done both. They've come out here and met with all of the water purveyors. They've also come out here and spoke at the Cayugas board meeting. So it's been both formal and informal. Yeah.
And it is obviously falling on deaf ears because, what reasoning are they giving us?
Mr. Bendick, are you trying to wave me down? Or okay.
Council, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mark, can you explain why the cost of the water coming down to Southern California has increased with the protection of the fish up north and the limitation of water, the fresh water or salt water? Because that's really the culprit here. It's not MWD trying to make money. It's state laws, federal laws that were passed in protection of the fish and how it's hammering us on the other end, on the receiving end of the water supply.
Yeah, and I'll address both MWD and that. But I mean, the way the whole Bay Delta system in essence works is you've got all of the fresh water flowing out of the mountains down through the rivers into the Delta. The Delta ends up in San Francisco Bay. You've got a freshwater saltwater interface that moves depending on the amount of water that comes into the bay and depending on the amount of water that's drawn out. You've also got some endangered species up in that area, primarily the Delta smelt. And there's been a finding that the Delta smelt has been endangered by the pumping. There's a ruling by a judge in Northern California that shut down the pumps. And those pumps have been shut down, and then intermittently they've been able to be used, and then they were used on a limited basis. And that's really what's impacted the ability to deliver water to Southern California through the State Water Project. Where we can criticize MWD if we'd like is in how strong a role they're playing, because they're certainly a bigger player in this than the city of Thousand Oaks is how strong a role they're playing, working through the state assembly members and congressmen and senators and the governor and the Department of Water Resources to really hold those folks and take those folks to task.
But what do I make of the articles that I read that MWD is increasing salaries and pension benefits?
Yeah, and those are the conversations we have with them, because in the past, for example, they were doing the same, trying to raise revenues, trying to raise reserves, trying to do some other things, and we were saying, boy, this isn't the time. If you're at this level, try to keep it at this level. If you need to postpone capital projects, because that's what the rest of us are having to do. And so those are the messages we're conveying to them clearly. Now's not the time for salary increases. Now's not the time for expanding staff. When they're coming to us and saying we need to raise rates, we're saying, well, okay, all of us have been reducing staff. Are you doing the same? Those are the questions we're asking.
Well, that is very frustrating to hear, and it's obvious that our hands are tied, and we've taken steps to show our protests of these increased water rates. Nonetheless, that doesn't help any of the customers who are here tonight or watching at home. But I would like to point out, though, that, for example, and please correct me if I'm wrong, California Water Service still has the highest rates or a higher rate than Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, I think, Cal Water Service is currently the highest, followed by California American, and then we're less than either one of those two.
I'm a customer of that particular entity, and I've actually tried this week to save the water in buckets when I rinse dishes, and I use that to water my plants. I've seen how Australians are actually putting, when they shower, catch basins or buckets to catch the water before it becomes hot, and then they use that to do other things. And sadly, I think we are almost at that level, and it's terrible that we're having to take such drastic measures in order to save water. And I couldn't believe when I saw my water bill increase 40%, and now more than that over the last 2 years. And it is a drain on the budget.
We have a question here.
The question is there anything that we can do to enforce water-saving measures, such as low-flush toilets? Some of them, the standard now is 1.6 gallons a flush, for example. There are toilets out there that are half that, 0.8. Is there anything that we can do to encourage people to purchase these very water-efficient appliances, or I should say, items?
Well, certainly one of the easiest ways to lower your water bill is to conserve water, and there's all kinds of different ways you can do that. Our water conservation programs have been very extensive, and we've been working a lot with a lot of individuals on different ways to conserve water. You mentioned one of them, which is low-flush toilets. Predominantly, the best place to look for conserving water is outdoors, but the water audits that we talked about before are available, and so we can send somebody out to somebody's house, go through their both inside and outside, and make recommendations for them on ways they can save water. And it includes high-efficiency clothes washers, low-emitting shower heads, low-flush toilets, high-efficiency dishwashers, aerators on your sinks that are putting out less water but still putting out nice flow. So there's a number of ways there, and also making sure there are no leaks, that there's no drips, that you're making just really good, efficient use of all the water that you do use. And then outside is where during the summer months when your bill is the highest, you're looking at about 70% of your water going outdoors. So that's really where you get a big bang for the buck, is efficient use of the water outside, making sure you've got your sprinklers programmed correctly and you're using water correct. And then, especially with water rates going up, not only do you save water, but you see a big difference in your bill.
Thank you.
Ms. Irwin, no? Okay, thank you. Ms. Bilde La Pena raised an interesting question, one that I want to ask you about. Can a family make it on 10?
Do you know how many people we have using 10? I use 11. Nancy says she gets by on 10, and she's got 3 kids living at home.
Okay, thanks. Just a matter of curiosity. Let me ask you this. It seems like the California Water Project has been, the flow through it has been decreased about 30% because of the Delta smell. That's true?
No, the allocation that we received from the water project was about 30%, so the decrease was 70.
Oh, okay. Okay, 70%. Now, has the biologic opinion on the salmon come out yet or been considered at court?
I can't recall where we are in salmon. The current biological opinion that's been preventing the pumping has been on the smelt, and I know that salmon is one of the considerations also, as well as a few other species. And I can't recall where those are or how those impact. There's 3 or 4 main species. They impact different months, and there's overlap there, and that's why there's only really 3 months left that aren't fully impacted. I don't remember how the salmon fall within that.
Well, I thought the opinion had come out, but I didn't in court yet. I think suffice it to say that we're going to see decreasing amounts of water allocated down here, which brings up an interesting point. This is not a question, it's a statement. But MWD is not invited to sit at the table during deliberations in Northern California. That needs to be understood by everyone. They're just not invited. And yet, what the Northern California people do greatly affects MWD and the customers down here in the South. So people need to realize that, which brings me to another point, and that is we don't have any real leverage against MWD. We can plead with them, beg with them, try to reason with them, point out their errors, and try to get them to see reason. And but we can't really force them to do it. We can only ask. Because, is that not true? Yeah. So we need to ensure that we constantly ask, constantly beat on them, constantly try to get them to see reason. Are we applying for our funds for water projects?
Yes.
How many sets?
Well, let's see if Mr. Spurgeon recalls. I know we've got a water tank that we've applied for funds for. What other capital projects? As far as specific projects, not sure. Okay. But, I mean, quite a few, tens of millions of dollars that we've requested. There's a lot of money out there. We're going through the competitive process. Sure. We've been very successful. Got notice today, actually not on a water project, but we got the E76, which is the big federal authorization today for the 10123, which we're really excited about. Way ahead of schedule. Our folks are working hard on that and a lot of these other grants, and we're figuring out that federal process and getting our way through it.
Okay, that is exciting. Let me ask you, too, the tertiarily treated water at Hill Canyon is suitable for consumption, yes?
Yeah, the water that leaves Hill Canyon actually meets all drinking water standards, and then we, as you're well aware, sell it to a downstream water purveyor, Camarosa Water District. They actually sell it to an agricultural user, but it does meet those standards. It could be used for reuse. One of the reasons we didn't include penalties in our rates is because of that water that we sold downstream, and because we actually have banked water available to us, we don't think we will be subject to penalties if we get to that position. But we don't have any guarantees on that. But because of the water we have banked down there, we think that gives us a good hedge and allows us to keep the rates where they are, not have to include other costs and fees that could be involved there. That's because of that resold water.
Okay, would the water be better served for consumption than selling it to Camarosa?
Well, it's from a water perspective, we're really in a regional area, and so as a city, we oftentimes think of our incorporated boundaries. But from an overall perspective, if somebody else is using less water, then that makes more of that state water available for us. And so really, as long as the water is getting reused, it doesn't matter if it's being reused downstream or really pumped back up into Thousand Oaks and reused here. As long as it's getting reused as a region, we benefit from it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. There are no further questions. Okay. Prior to closing the public hearing, there's one last call for any written protests. Once public hearing is closed, no further written protests will be accepted. Public hearing is now closed. Ms. Lawrence, what the results of the protest count?
The total number of notices issued by the city on the proposed water rate increase was 16,381. The total number of valid protests received were 53, which includes 7 protests received this evening pending verification. This is less than a majority protest, and based on the results, there are insufficient protests received, and a motion is in order to approve the staff recommendation.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say at this time that there's one statement card against the increase. Okay, we are ready for a motion. Mr. Fox?
I'm going to move that the ordinance adjusting and setting rates and fees and discharge limits of the city water division be read in title only, further reading be waived, and if no objection is introduced. I'd also like to include in the motion that staff would bring back at a subsequent council meeting a recommendation for lack of a better description, the tiered rate or the average rate proposal that we discussed. That's the motion.
Thank you very much. Comments to the motion? Yes, Ms. Irwin?
You did mention, you said flattening the rates? Look at flattening the rates?
No, I don't believe flattening the rates is a option.
No, looking at averaging. That's
yes,
what did you mention that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In billing.
In billing, right. That's what I
And Mr. Minnick, just a nod, is that something that can come back in 30 days? 60 days?
Within 3 months, as soon as we can.
Okay, the sooner the better, because we're going to be out of summer soon, okay, and so we're hopefully going to get into some winter months, and now's the time we'd be able to do that.
And we'll ask the Works Director to clarify when the rates take effect.
Yeah, the rates will take effect in November.
Okay.
And so which is a good thing, because typically the November, December, January usage is fairly low. But we'll need to get with our billing folks in the finance department to find out about doing that.
Right.
Flat.
Okay.
Okay, I am going to support the motion, and I listened to all the residents that were here, and I know it's an extreme frustration. Unfortunately, when our rates are going way up, we have to. It's just a pass through, and otherwise we're going to be running out of money. And we've mentioned this in the past with a lot of issues like the budget. I really put a big blame on Sacramento for not fixing this water issue. We could have seen this coming up many years ago, and now Southern Californians and people in Thousand Oaks in particular are really suffering with this. And I already, especially.
I'm sorry, I don't need to interrupt.
Hold it. This is improper. Thanks, Jeff.
And you shouldn't be doing that, and that's discrimination.
There are a lot of people that are already, have already done a lot to conserve water. Ms. Phil DeLapino was mentioning about Australia, people putting buckets in their showers. I've heard from many residents that are already doing things like that. Many residents, I mean, I look all over my neighborhood and the lawns are brown. They already are doing what they can. So I understand the frustration. I will respond. Single-family residents, as Mr. Watkins said, are not suffering the entire burden. The rates for businesses are going up. He mentioned that twice already. So it is very frustrating to us. I really hope that we finally get some action in Sacramento. They need to take care of this because this problem is only going to get worse. So it's unfortunately, I am going to have to support Mr. Fox's motion, not happily. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Mr. Fox, maker of the motion.
No, there's nothing that's going to be said to make anybody whose water rates are going to go up 50% feel any better. So, if you watch the public hearing tonight, if you're here, it should be evident that we're doing the best we can in the circumstances we have, and at a minimum, we're going to try to make the billing process equal out throughout the calendar year to hopefully mirror whatever rainy system that we have. And it's unfortunate. I don't think anybody feels good about what we're doing here. That's all I got.
Okay, please vote.
The motion carries 4-0. Councilmember Gillette absent. And the ordinance title is an ordinance adjusting and setting fees and restating rates of the City Water Division.
Okay, thank you very much. And would you please open hearing 8D?
Hearing advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider agenda item 8D, wastewater connection charge adjustment. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council, and we have no speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Watkins, you're presenting again.
Thank you, Mayor Glancy, members of the council, and somewhat happier presentation for on the wastewater side. On the wastewater side, we are keeping the service and rates the same. City Council looked at and approved the wastewater financial plan back in July of this year and set this evening for the public hearing. There are no changes to the wastewater service charges. There's changes only to the connection charges. The connection charges are adjusted in accordance with the ENR index, which is the same as the wastewater. So there's a 4.6% construction cost index change over the one-year period. And so we show change in the wastewater connection charges accordingly. To show a comparison of our wastewater connection fees, we still are on the high side on the connection fees. What that really relates to is the fact that we do require development to pay its own way, and so we're burdening new projects as they should be with the cost of that service. On the wastewater service charge comparison, we are the lowest on the list. We are still at $25.45. We have not increased that for a period of time. I really need to compliment this city council and previous city councils. This predates my tenure with the city. It's about 10 years or more ago that the city committed to a building program, expanded the wastewater treatment plant, upgraded the plant, and really invested in that capital, and that's what's allowed our rates to stay the same. And so the city council really does need to be commended for making that commitment, because there were rate increases a long time ago, but those rate increases from that time have what's allowed rates to be stable today. And so, so there are no recommended service charge increases. We also include within our recommendation the opportunity to prepay up to $5.5 million of debt. We do have a good fund balance within the wastewater side, and so we're asking council to allow us that flexibility. Public Works, working with the finance department, will determine whether that makes sense or whether it might make sense to actually refinance, because given the city's current bond rating, we can refinance at also very favorable rates. So we're asking council for that flexibility there. And then the one other change that we're making, and there's actually an item in the green packet also because there was a small typo, is in the municipal code change to restaurant definition. This has been an item that's come up over the years as we compute fixture units for new development. It doesn't affect the billing for anybody that exists in the city. It only affects those that are developing new or that are coming in for a change. But it also makes us consistent with Uniform Plumbing Code and therefore consistent with other agencies. And so that change is included in there. So with that, asking for the staff recommendation, and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Questions to staff? Ms. Bill de la Pena?
No, I was ready to move approval of the staff recommendation.
Comments to the motion? None, please vote.
The motion carries 4-0 with Councilmember Gillette absent, and the ordinance title is an ordinance adjusting and setting fees and discharge limits and restating rates of the city wastewater division.
Okay, you know what we'll do? I need to backtrack just a wee bit and close the public hearing. And we can now entertain Ms. Bill de la Pena's motion and vote. And vote again, please. My apologies.
Councilmember Irwin. Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you again. Okay, department reports. Ms. Hahn, you're going to talk about citywide goals and objectives.
Mayor Glancy and council members, tonight we are presenting for council's review the annual report card on the city's performance regarding fiscal year 2008-9 council priorities and fiscal year 2007-8 and 8-9 citywide goals and objectives and performance measures that were part of the adopted budget for the last 2 years. We are presenting it for the first time, and we are presenting for the first time benchmarking in this report. This is the document I'm referring to. As previous workshops and study sessions, the City Council adopted the citywide goals and objectives for the 2 fiscal years ended June 30th, 2009, and approved and reaffirmed the mission statement, customer service philosophy, top 10 City Council priorities, and the City Council norms. Staff from all departments have reviewed and compiled the necessary data to prepare this report. This document updates progress on council priorities, goals, and performance measures, and together these updates provide a thorough review of the achievements and accomplishments of the city organization under the City Council direction for these last 2 fiscal years. Some highlights include the top 10 City Council priorities approved on May 13, 2008. We have accomplished 60% of those. They're either fully completed or completed ongoing, and 40% are ongoing. On the 300 objectives for the last 2 fiscal years, you can find that on page 30 to 99 in this document. We have accomplished 73% of those, either they're fully completed or completed ongoing, and 16% are ongoing and 8% are in progress, and 3% are on hold. So I consider that good accomplishment for this last 2 years. Performance measures for the prior 2 fiscal years were updated and have been incorporated into the attached goals and objectives report that starts on page 100 of the document. As the document illustrates, projections were met in most areas across all departments, and finance staff continues to work closely with all departments to fine-tune the performance measures and benchmarking. In fact, this next 2-year budget cycle, we've made a considerable number of changes to those performance measures. And then lastly, I want to draw to your attention, in the staff report, we actually presented to you at your request benchmarking. Actually, it was something that you requested at the last, in June, when we did the adopted budget. The comparisons are shown in attachment 3. They're on page 222 of the agenda packet. And we discussed in this report some challenges in developing the benchmarks and considerable debate among what cities to benchmark to. For the ease of comparison, since we are familiar with services in other Ventura County cities, we chose to compare services received by residents of similar-sized cities in Ventura County, namely the cities of Oxnard, Simi Valley, and Ventura, and then, of course, Thousand Oaks. In setting out to provide the benchmarking measures, departments were asked to determine what they believe to be the most useful benchmarks for services they provide. So we were working with the departments and coming up with those benchmarks. It is the goal of these comparisons to highlight both services where the City of Thousand Oaks compares favorably to selected cities and also the services where the city may need to improve upon. The results will be updated each year with analysis done as to any new benchmarking measures that should be included in the study, as well as elimination of those that are no longer useful. This was the first attempt at benchmarking comparisons, and it's expected that next year we'll be able to provide additional analysis. So with that, I'd like to entertain any questions, and I also want to thank Gay Mosser and Jamie Miller for their assistance in putting this report together.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Questions? Ms. Bildo, opinion?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the benchmarking presentation. I know it had been brought up by the Budget Task Force approximately 4 years ago or so, and I'm glad we are finally at this point. What do you see as the areas where the city needs improvement?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the areas that we have seen, and maybe it's shown on page 222 of this report, it shows how many building permits we're doing compared to other agencies, but we also have a higher staff too. So there's things you see in here that also give you some perspective on staffing, and I don't know if it really tells you good things or bad things necessarily. It just, a lot of them tell a story. And, I mean, one example might be like, we might call out on page 228, we have human resources staff per FTE, and it's a little higher for our agency than other agencies. However, they have a higher base in the other cities. They've got more employees, and you have to have a minimum level of staffing, for example, for human resources. So Oxnard and Ventura and Simi Valley all have their own police departments. So it more tells a story than tells us what you're doing wrong. I mean, I don't know if anybody... I hope that answers your question. It's more, it tells you a story, and
it doesn't tell the full story, but that's okay. Why were only the building services and human resources and city clerk, which apparently also has a higher number of employees compared to other city clerk departments in other cities, why were these selected and not, say, overall employees, or more departments, I should say?
That's a good question. We kind of struggle with that, and that's one of the things we want to be able to enhance next time. But, for example, when we went to the city of Oxnard and asked them how many employees they have in the city manager's office, they have 100. So then it required a lot more work to go back then and figure out what exactly is the core services that they provide and the staffing for the core services, and how does that compare to every other city manager's office in the county. And, you know, actually, city clerk, you bring that up, they also provide records management, which is a core service for us that we have a high expectation for, and a lot of the other cities don't go to that effort that we do. So it's more comparison, telling a story and comparing what we're doing to others. And
so how will you as staff take these findings? And obviously you say you will improve on those findings because more research needs to be done. This is just a first step. What will you do with this information?
Do you want to answer that, Scott? I see him waving at me.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's a great question. Again, the reason we did this at council's request is it's for informational purposes, so you can see how your organization stacks up to others. And I'll comment on, and there are some services where the council has stated very clearly you want a higher level of service. Planning is a good example. We have more planners than the other cities, and that's why, because we pay more attention to that, and there are more layers of review, and in some areas we have less staff. So it really is a barometer from which you can use to measure. There's no real right or wrong way to interpret the data.
1 second, I wasn't quite done. Thank you. This information that you, go ahead, Ms. Hong.
Well, I do want to add, though, I think your question brings up a good point, is if we have to do more downsizing, for example, if it looks like that's going to be in our future, clearly looking at how we compare other agencies and where we might pare back, what does the council want to see in terms of services will be explored. And, you can see then as a council what we're doing that's a higher level of service than another city and whether or not you're willing to deal with that kind of lower level of service. I mean, that's clearly what this benchmarking will help us do.
And this information was put together by an outside consultant or all by city staff?
This is my outside consultant. Jamie Miller's in the finance department. She's our senior financial analyst, so you did a great job on it, I think.
I am very appreciative of the effort because I think it was long overdue, and I'm glad that we're finally doing it. And how often did you say will you come before the council with updates?
This is going to be an annual process. We'll be doing it every year in September when we do the update, our report card for the council on all our objectives. This will be part of it. And it's also going to be in the budget document, too.
And we will also see then other departments as well, and rather than the couple here that you included tonight.
That's our goal, is to try to find a way to make sure we're comparing apples to apples with our other agencies and expanding the report that you see here.
Thank you. I think this will be very helpful in making, as you say, future budget decisions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah, just my question for Mr. Mitnick. Ms. Hong touched on it, but on page 223, employees per 1,000 residents, I got to say, that got my attention. For a city, for example, of Oxnard, who has a larger population, substantially larger, and has their own police and fire department, we have 3 times the employees.
This is the city clerk's department only.
What's that?
This is the city clerk's department only. We didn't look at totals.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, I missed that.
Yeah.
Wow. I was thinking, okay, do we have we didn't do it, but did we look at employees per 1,000 residents citywide?
City, I don't know the answer to that. No, we did not. We did that for the police department, and this is the city clerk office.
I'd like to see that, because Ms. Hong touched on it, and I think she's exactly correct. That's why it jumped out at me. I was always under the impression that we actually were probably, I don't want to say underemployed, but we actually probably have less employees than like cities, although we pride ourselves on very, very good service. I think I'd like to see an addendum to this report that does compare employees per 1,000 residents, so we can just take a look at that.
Yeah, and again, it's going to tell a story because we have different services than other cities provide. We have a large library that others in the county don't have, and we have a theater. So, and they have police and fire, which we don't have. So anyway, we can do it, but it may be an apples and oranges kind of analysis.
Yeah,
that's why I probably didn't get in here.
Yeah, I think staff did a good job in the beginning of the report to outline there is no apples to apples comparison. But I think also council's certainly has the ability to take a look at total employees and then services, and just to get a comparison. For example, CME has their own police department, but they use the fire protection district. So, then park districts and all those other things would need to be looked at. But I think as an addendum, it doesn't necessarily have to be brought back to council. I think a council mail would be appropriate for that.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we can certainly, we'll do that, and we'll put that in the next year update too, but we'll get that in your council mail. I would also like to just remind council too that the bottom line from municipalities is the level of services that we provide. We use a mixture of in-house employees to deliver services, and we contract out for services. You have 2 departments that are a great way to compare, Public Works and Community Development Department. When we were in the growth mode several years ago, the Community Development Department, they were adding planners, full-time positions. Well, conversely, the Public Works Department, they were contracting out for a lot of their services. And then as the rate of growth slowed down, we would cut the contracts with the consultants, but then we were left with the planners on the planning side. So there are different ways to provide service, So always keep that in mind. It's not just a question of how many employees do we have in each department versus other cities. It's how do you deliver the services and what are the service levels and how much are we spending. So we'll try to provide more clarity on that.
In fact, what I'd suggest, if with council concurrence, is this is in fact a very, very good tool that council should be using prior to us setting our budget. And I would encourage the city manager to do an all-inclusive benchmark process as the standard budgeting practice. I know you come to us a couple of meetings before we actually do the budget in preparatory meetings, study sessions, and I think this benchmarking process, which I think was rightly pointed out, was really something that many budget task forces looked at a number of years ago. Would be a very good tool for council, particularly moving forward with likely challenging budgets for the next 4 to 6 years. I'd just like to encourage the city manager to be have an all-inclusive benchmarking process, i.e. all city departments, and then comparisons to other cities where appropriate. But a very, very good report. I don't have any other questions. Unless there are some questions, I can move. I don't think
Ms. Vildapena had a follow-up question. One, I believe it was, didn't you say?
Yes, it wasn't a question rather than something I wanted to point out because we were mentioning the number of employees per 1,000 residents, and I'd like to point out on page 227 that we have the highest number of daily firefighters per 1,000 resident in the county compared to Oxnard and Ventura, who have their own department. Simi Valley shares the same number as we do. Because we use the district,
yeah, that data needs to be cleaned up because that's showing the total for Simi and Thousand Oaks. So we do have some more refined data.
We do? Okay. And then for the police, we obviously are saving a lot of money with our contracts with the Sheriff's Department, quite a bit of money, and that is something I wanted to point out as well.
Thank you. Ms. Irwin.
Yeah, I do think benchmarking is this information is very interesting, and hopefully it'll evolve so that we cover a few more things. A couple of things. Obviously, we have a Cadillac Library Service. If you look at those numbers, and then we're saving a lot on police service. The one question is, I thought a city that would be more perhaps comparable would be Camarillo. Is there some reason that they're not included in as one of the 4 cities?
We left it out only because their population is considerably smaller than ours, and we're looking at Oxnard and Simi and Ventura because they're closer in population. But if you want to see Camarillo, we certainly can include it. They have a lot more contract services than we do even.
I'm not saying right now, but maybe the next iteration that you go through, because they do contract with the Sheriff's Department, and I mean, they have the same fire situation we do. And then I had one question, I guess it's probably for Mr. Watkins, and that is, why is it that Oxnard has a higher percent of renewable energy than Thousand Oaks? Okay. That's the answer I wanted.
For the public, he said we're going to fix that.
Okay, motion to receive and file. Ms. Irwin.
I move that we receive and file this report.
Comments to the motion? Please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thanks, guys. That was a great report. Okay, Department Report 9C. No, 9B. Mr. Alawami, as soon as you can get up there, you can give us your report.
Mayors, members of the council, excuse me. On June 23rd this year, following the Many Mansion project consideration by the City Council, the Council directed staff to review the issue of undergrounding the existing overhead utility lines serving existing single-family homes adjacent to Many Mansion project. In general, when a development is proposed on a vacant site, the city requires that all existing overhead utility poles and lines located on the street frontage and along the interior property lines to be undergrounded. The undergrounding of these surfaces, especially along the street frontage or the right-of-way, will benefit the community by eliminating the visual impact of these lines. If these lines along the street frontage cannot be undergrounded because it is impractical to do so and for other reasons, then the applicant is required to cash out by paying the estimated costs of undergrounding these lines, which will be deposited into a city undergrounding utilities fund to be used by the city in the future to underground surfaces along right-of-ways in the city. The lines that are located along interior property lines could remain in place by filing a underground utility waiver application, because it's not practical to underground these lines because they serve other properties adjacent to the site. However, even after the approval of underground utility waiver application, these interior lines could be undergrounded voluntarily. This could be done if the applicant agrees to underground these lines and by paying the entire cost, including the connection to the residences, or if the individual property owner agrees to pay their share of the undergrounding from the poles to the residents, and the developer pays for the remaining of the cost. But again, this could be done only if both parties voluntarily agree to do that. The approved UUW application for many mansions waived the requirements to underground certain poles and lines located on the site and along the interior property lines. There's a total of 8 poles existing on and adjacent to the site. 2 of them will be removed because they serve existing residences that will be demolished. And the remaining 6 are the subject of the underground utility waiver application. In the exhibit that you have with the report, pole number 6, located in the northwest portion of the site, could either be underground by many mansion, or if they chose, they could cash out by paying the cost to underground that line into the city's underground fund, which could be used in the future to underground other utilities, overhead utilities in the city. Pole number 5 in the exhibit cannot be undergrounded because it serves several other properties to the east. The remaining 4 could be undergrounded because they serve individual property owners or individual properties. The cost estimate to underground these 4 lines on the east and west of the site, approximately $130,000, which does not include the on-site cost of the drop surface excavation, installation of conduits, and electrical panel converter, which is estimated at $6,000. In the past, the city has not used general fund, redevelopment fund, or underground utility fund to underground overhead utility surfaces located along interior property lines serving individual private properties. The city, however, used underground utility funds to underground overhead utility surfaces located along the city's right-of-way. And recent examples for that is Moore Park Road, Fentu Park Road, Kimber Drive, and Reno Road. With that, staff will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alawami. Questions of staff? A motion to receive report? Ms. Irwin.
I'll move that we receive the report.
Thank you very much. Comments to the motion? Please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alawami. Appreciate it. Department report 9C. Mr. Adams, you're up. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Tonight I'll be presenting a brief update on the state budget and the impacts to the City of Thousand Oaks. Presented by myself. Wanted to go back and talk about how we got to this point. In 2009,
it's lonely at the top.
It certainly is. I'm trying to spice it up a little, so make this exciting. 2009, 2010, California state budget was signed by the governor. Most of you know that he signed an early budget in February as he was trying to address the budget deficit for fiscal year 08-09. Both years combined, he had a deficit, or the state had a deficit of $42 billion. With that deficit, he signed in February the 09-10 budget, anticipated propositions being approved in May. When those May propositions failed, he was given a budget deficit for 09-10 of $24 billion. And so during the month of July, the state came with solutions to address that problem. City of Thousand Oaks, I wanted to just talk briefly on what we did to balance our budget for fiscal year 09-2010. As we all know, the city provided a retirement incentive. We had several unfunded positions, 34 total. We also reduced public safety. We decided to use reserves from our workers' comp fund to offset the increase to workers' comp insurance. We have used fixed asset replacement, and we increased some other franchise fees and contracted out street sweeping. So these were items that we did to close our budget gap, which was at that point $6 million. In fiscal year 08, our revenues in the general fund were $72 million. We are projecting revenues for 09-10 at $66 million. So that's a $6 million reduction in revenue in which the city took action to balance our budget. All right, what did this California state budget do to impact cities? The first item is Proposition 1A, property tax loan. Statewide, that's $1.9 billion, and this represents 8% of the property tax throughout the state. They also are taking away tax increment from redevelopment agencies at a tune of $2.05 billion statewide over 2 years. And then the third one is the highway user tax account, in which they are deferring tax allocation payments for this fiscal year. Prop 1A summary, 2004, part of the deal, the budget that was dealt with Governor when he first came into office, there's Proposition 1A that was approved by the voters that allowed for the potential of borrowing property tax at 8%. This estimate for the loan this year is $1.9 billion. The impact to Thousand Oaks, in which we've been notified by the county last night, was $2.37 million or $2.4 million to Thousand Oaks. This includes reductions in our property tax revenue, reductions in our sales tax related to the triple flip, and reductions in our VLF fees related to property tax in lieu. The summary on Prop 1A is it is a 3-year loan that the state needs to be paid back per the Constitution by 2013 with interest. Prop 1A, there are two options that we foresee right now. One is to allow the borrowing by the state and to book the receivable. The second one is join the Prop 1A securitization program. The state has not adopted the legislation to approve this, but it is anticipated that will be approved this week, hopefully. This is run by the California Community, trying to think of the name, Statewide Community Development Authority. Our recommendation at this point is to use one-time reserves to offset the revenue that will be lost or be borrowed by the state. The city will wait to see what the program ultimately looks like for the Prop 1A securitization, but based on the information we know now, the city is recommending, or the staff is recommending a one-time use of reserves to offset this revenue. The RDA tax increment takeaway. AB 1389 established a $350 million takeaway last year. The California Redevelopment Association was successful against the state to bar them from borrowing that money or taking that money. The state believes they've come up with a solution that will be successful in the courts, and based on that, they are proposing a $1.7 billion takeaway from RDAs statewide. This represents about a third of the property tax that redevelopment agencies receive per year. The second year, they're planning on taking away $350 million for a total of $2.05 billion. For the city of Thousand Oaks, our redevelopment agency is expected to see an impact of $7.4 million. For 08 or for 09-10 is 6.1. Again, represents about a third of the property tax revenue that the redevelopment receives. Just to note, since 1992, the state has taken away approximately $5.3 million from the redevelopment agency. The take that they're proposing this year is almost $1 million more than they've taken over the last 15 years. City at this point doesn't have a lot of options. We're recommending that we budget the payment to the state or to the county for 09-10 and fiscal year 10 and 11. We are members of the California Redevelopment Association. Staff would suggest that we support the CRA lawsuit. The second thing we would also recommend is that we notify the county auditor March 1st that we will be making payment by check, and that we make the payment on the due date to the county, hopefully that, like last time, that the CRA is successful and we're ultimately not paying for that. In order to be able to afford the $6.1 million, staff is recommending that we postpone 4 capital projects. Here's the listing of the 4 capital projects. The first one is the Teal Boulevard Improvements Phase 2. Phase 3, which is $1 million, the Discovery Center, which is $5 million, and the Timber School Historical Preservation Project at $1 million. Briefly just talk about the highway user tax deferral. Original proposed language was to take away all of the highway user tax funding. Ultimately, legislators were successful in lobbying the governor that the solution was just to defer the payments. This is a cash flow issue for the state. Right now, we are certain payments are being deferred. There's a cleanup bill that will revise what months are deferred and when we are paid. The ultimate impact to the city is interest earnings based on this cash deferral, and which is estimated at $53,000. Just some final closing comments. I really just talked about the state budget tonight, the impacts of the city. Financial policies have been key. We're able to pay for the loan based on reserves. The city does maintain its 20% reserves for fund balance. So we can afford, at this point, the $2.4 million to the state. Council has been very proactive in financial planning. The financial strategic plan is an example. We've been very proactive in our own budget, and we have made adjustments to have a balanced budget. Currently, we have the city auditors here reviewing our audit for fiscal year 08-09. We are working on those results. We do anticipate providing the council an update in late October, early November on both the 08-09 results as well as analysis for the first quarter of 09-10. That analysis for 09-10 will also cover sales tax that we received in the second quarter fiscal year or calendar year 09. It will also update you on property tax assessed valuations that we received from the county auditor earlier this month. So that's my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. It was indeed enthralling. Questions? Yes, Ms. Bill de la Pena. Because I'm used to looking to the right tonight. Ms. Irwin, my apologies.
Can you explain to me how the securitization program would work?
Securitization program, the law that they're trying to amend right now would allow, or trying to create, would allow for the California statewide community association to actually issue bonds based on the receivable from the state. So they would go to market, they would sell bonds to investors at a stated interest rate, and the state, when they make the payments in June, those those bondholders would be paid with interest. And so right now, as I understand, the state is paying for all the issuance cost. and the cost of the interest that the bondholders would anticipate once those became due and payable in June of 2013.
So let's say in 3 years, they're just as messed up as they are now, and then they decide that they're not going to pay the cities back. Is there a higher possibility that they would pay the cities that have securitized, or pay the bonds off, and then the cities that have actually taken money out of reserves not get paid?
Well, it would be against the Constitution, so I mean, I would... again, you would think that they would be paying those debts that they legally owe. There is a point that if we do receive the money now, the people that potentially won't be paid are the bondholders, and that would free us up for that risk. That risk, depending on who you talk to, is very, it's not, the state, if they did not pay bondholders, they would be worse off than they are now because they go to the market all the time, and if they couldn't borrow money in the market, I would think that the state would collapse. With that said, not paying us through the Constitution, would be almost as bad as not paying the bondholders.
It obviously, to me it seems like a smarter suggestion to pay it with reserves, but I'm just wondering, I would think that they absolutely have to pay bondholders off, and if 3 years down the road they say, okay, the half of the cities that paid out of their reserves aren't getting their money back. I know you say it's against the Constitution, but we've seen that already. So that's, have you weighed those possibilities?
We have experience with the state doing this. Back in 2004, they did borrowing of vehicle license fee. They did pay it back, and actually paid it back early, because for them at that point, once it's a loan, it's simply about cash flow. And as we know, the state always kicks the can down the road, so they're going to pay whatever the most current due and postpone other payments longer down the road. So certainly, the risk for us is eliminated if we do join the program. Again, the interest earnings is really just the issue is, do we get more pickup if we allow the loan? And that's probably the case. And that pickup depends on what ultimately the rate is established by the state. As an example, the state established a rate of 3.75 for the registered warrants, or the IOUs. At that rate, we're talking... for the 3-year term, about $80,000. And so do we want to hedge the bet by doing the securitization or forego that revenue?
Like I said, it seems the obvious thing is to pay out of the reserves and earn that interest, but if you don't trust Sacramento at all, and they think it's very important to pay the bondholders back, I'm just seeing that as, obviously we're deferring to what staff is recommending, but it just seems like there's more of a risk given that they haven't accomplished anything
and staff
at this point.
Yeah, staff has done, we have certainly looked at the program. We are waiting to hear what the state sets as the rate, which will be set September 28th at the end of the month. The last day that we can join the program would be November 10th, but we would need to have a resolution in front of council joining the program before then. So that would be something we would need to make a decision, staff or council, within the next month, and we will monitor it and take a look and see what comes up. But at this point, staff is recommending the use of reserves.
All right, thank you, but I guess you'll look at it up till the very last point then. All right.
Downhill. Ms. Billy LaPena.
Now, I initially had a question for our library director, who seemed to have an injured arm, and I hope it's not related to the fact that his budget is about to be impacted. But I was just wondering if this is just an accounting exercise, taking money from the library fund and then backfilling it with funds from the general.
You're correct. The city's council, the council policy of the 5 and 15% is on all funds, including the library. It's the library and general fund, and so the calculation that we have in reserves for the general fund includes the 15 and 5% for the library. So you are correct that we will reduce the revenue in the library, but ultimately subsidize or support them more through the general fund for this next fiscal year.
My next question is similar to what Councilmember Irwin mentioned, namely, what if the state fails in its obligation to repay the loan? Have we, joining the Prop 1A securitization, whatever it is called, is the first legal step then to make that happen, should that occur?
If we join the program, and we will get our money in December and in June, and we will have no risk of them not paying in 3 years.
Okay, it will be good. I would agree that council would welcome the information prior to November 10th that you said we might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? A motion, please. No. Ms. Bilda-Pena? No, you can't.
I move to approve recommendations 1 through 6.
Comments to the motion? None, please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much. Redevelopment Agency reports, we have none. Committee, the ad hoc committee, social services. Ms. Irwin, you going to do the report on that?
Ms. Bill de la Pena and I interviewed for the social service ad hoc committee, and do we have any speakers on this?
We have no speakers, period.
Okay. We are recommending the appointment of Gloria Armstrong, Roger Benson, Frank Bianchi, Carol Burgess, Jacqueline Chang, Clyde Doheny, Rita Phillips, Lisa Evans Powell, Nick Iqbal Kidway. And again, we appreciate all those people that interviewed, and we're willing to serve the city for another 2 years. And I would ask your concurrence.
Certainly. A motion made to receive the report. Please vote.
The recommendation is to approve the appointments.
It is indeed. Thank you.
And that motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and VCCTAC, Ventura County Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. The committee met for interviews, and we recommend the appointments of Ray Julander to fill regular position vacancy and Don Lanson to fill alternate position vacancy with term office for indeterminate period. So I would move that we approve that. Please vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And Ms. Irwin, you will give us a quick brief on the league meeting?
I think we can just say the report's included.
Okay. Excellent meeting. Excellent meeting. Okay. City Manager, follow-up request from public?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, no follow-up from items from tonight. By way of announcements and upcoming agenda items, I do want to point out that we've got some feedback from Rod Megley, our fire division chief, on the fire going on. It surpassed, this about an hour ago, 6,200 acres, and the winds are expected to pick up later this evening, and they'll keep an eye on how things go for tomorrow. The city of Thousand Oaks does not appear to be threatened or in any danger at this time. And the 2 firefighters that we mentioned that were injured, they've been released from the hospital. No damage yet reported to residents at this point. Okay, by way of the next council meeting, that'll be on Tuesday, October 13th. 1 public hearing at this time, and that's the alcoholic energy drinks ordinance. We have a few department reports, 2 worth mentioning at this point. The community mediation pilot program, council, remember you established that not that long ago. Now it's time for a 6-month update, and our police chief will provide that on the 13th. And we'll also be responding to the City of Simi Valley's request to amend the Terra Rajada Greenbelt so they can proceed with the annexation of the Ronald Reagan Library and the surrounding parcels. That's it by way of City Manager update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. At this time, I would like to wish an extremely happy birthday to our city clerk, Linda Lawrence. Many more. Mrs. Albano, you have a closed session to announce?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and members of the public. We had 3 listed on the agenda, but 2 of them were placeholders. We're only going to be calling one. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Chateau Holding versus City of Thousand Oaks, pursuant to Government Code Section 54-956.9, subsection A, and there will not be a need to report anything out at the end of that meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Tonight, I'd like to have an adjournment in honor of Carl Blackburn, father of Linda Boyd, accounting customer service representative in the finance department, was known to all as Blackie. Born on a farm in Oklahoma in 1923, his childhood was spent in rural Oklahoma where life included priming the pump in the morning to get water and caring for the animals. He moved to Southern California in his teens. After serving in the Air Force during World War II, Carl returned to the San Fernando Valley and began his career as a general contractor. He also served as president of the Optimist Club of the San Fernando Valley in 1964. Although he did most of his construction in the San Fernando Valley, he had ties to the Canal Valley through his work in constructing the boathouse on the lake in Westlake near Boccaccio's. His creativity continued throughout his life, and he kept busy by designing and making woodworking projects. During his life, Carl's many fans and friends knew him best for his optimistic outlook on life, cheerful disposition, and his wonderful ability to tell jokes. His family was his pride and joy, and he will be dearly missed by everyone that knew him. On the behalf of the Thousand Oaks City Council, I would like to express our deepest sympathies to the Blackburn family. Before we end tonight's City Council meeting, I would like to take a moment and reflect upon an unfortunate tragedy that unfolded in our community on September 16th. We grieve for the loss of 2 young children, 12-year-old Jason Mulvaney and a 7-year-old sister Jennifer, as well as the loss of their father James. The act of violence that took their lives has deeply saddened our community. On behalf of the City Council, we extend our sincerest condolences to their mother Julie Mulvaney and the entire family. I also urge our community to continue lending support to those who have been shocked by this devastation, particularly the students from Lang Ranch Elementary and Los Cerritos Middle School. During these tragic times, it is critical for friends and family to come forward and support everyone involved and affected. With that, we'll adjourn to our regular meeting, October 13th.